They're close, right? Yeah.
I'd like to open this meeting for the October 7th, 2019.
September's a blur.
At 7:31.
Which also would be something.
And I think we'll suspend for the minutes at this point. We'll go to
They
the
weren't ready anyway.
administrative discussion, town meeting warrant.
So the budget is on for Article 7. I know, there's a couple extra copies, and I just look at it. To see if the town will vote to expend from the Oak Hill Cell Tower Fund, blah, 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 the amount of $18,500 or any other sum to be used for projects under the direction and charge of the Conservation Commission. And this article has become necessary because apparently we can't just spend from the Oak Hill Fund, which has already been approved for Conscom. We have to get the year's budget pre-approved at town meeting also.
Now, would this really pass though with that kind of language saying, and any other amount? Because I would think it would have to be a specific amount to be passed in the warrant.
I can ask her, but this is what.
We don't use that money.
So, and then I had on the bottom there where that 18,500 came from, the bulk of which was for Cloverdale.
Quick question, which I know we brought up
Yeah.
before. The money, if hypothetically there was an unused portion, what account is that earmarked to go back into?
It does not come out until we request it, so
Okay,
there's not a question of that. So yeah,
Okay.
I mean,
good.
I'm sure about that. Town manager would like two things, if you're amenable, is one, a vote to support Article 7, if you so agree. And then, if anyone's gonna be at town meeting and would be willing to answer questions if something comes up, which they kind of don't think will, especially given what else is going on at town meeting.
I'll definitely be there.
There's a possibility, I can see.
They expect that Cheryl, the finance director, would make the presentation. Someone from the Conscom might read the article for the motion. So if anyone's willing to do that.
Yeah, I'd be ready.
Okay. Anna's on.
Excellent.
I move that we support the Article 7 as written.
Do I hear a
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Request certificate of compliance, 22 Cricket Lane, 204-866.
Is everybody here for that? I am. No, I'm sorry, I am.
Hi, you can come on up if you like.
Oh, okay. So they had requested and submitted the as-built and everything for it. But when I went out there, I noticed there were some deviations. So I wasn't sure what your take on it would be. Just wanted
So if you want to introduce yourself and then just tell us a little bit about what's on the plan, that would be great.
Sure, my name is Karen McDonald, and I have the conservation notes pulled out. So, and I have pictures of the property before and after. So the conservation notes that I believe are different, what was done is different than what is noted in the notes, was they wanted, on number 3 on the conservation notes, paved patio shall be sawn cut prior to waterline installation. Patio will be patched with blacktop up to the waterline installation, and all excess blacktop shall be removed. Having blacktop immediately in front of a wall that leads to the pond invites runoff. I had all of that blacktop scooped out, moved, filled it in with dirt and sod, and it looks great. Neighbors are happy. Walls stable. Everything looks good. The other area that I would say,
there's a few copies of pictures.
I guess I can show you my pictures. This is what the yard looked like. I'll just give you the power. And I'm noting, this is a cottage that's on Spectacle Pond. I have owned and lived in the property for over 30 years. It was built in the 30s, burned down. It was one of those camps, along the lake. It was rebuilt into the cottage that it is today. A new septic system was put in, which required a new well to be put in, which required a jet system to be put in, which required the driveway to be dug up and made into a leach field, which required 7 huge pine trees to be removed, and significant amount of landscaping to get it to where it is now. I think I'm in compliance with what was required from the conservation notes. In fact, I think I exceeded by not putting blacktop on the area. And there are some pictures.
What's your-
What was the discrepancy?
So, you see on the first picture is the stairs and the plantings are on the steep slope, which have been in there since, I think, July, so that has stayed there for a couple of rains. So even though the vegetation hasn't grown a lot, it probably seems stabilized. The second picture is the side slope, which I think is the north side of the house, which hasn't been stabilized. And the third picture shows they had to, is it the porch, what's called the porch here?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
when this came out and they ripped it out and basically put back in grass, so, you know, yay. The wall down here also got rebuilt, and so that picture where you can see the, I think it's the third picture in there, it's this area in here that's kind of unstabilized. And then it wasn't fully clear to me from, I think, the last picture, if this wall was actually rebuilt. If it was rebuilt in situ, or if it actually, I think it might have drifted a little bit towards the pond. It's kind of hard to tell, because it's not really shown on the as-built one or the other. So yeah, so on this one, you can see the old wall.
Oh, okay.
Theoretically, kind of went like this, and the new wall sticks out a little bit more than that.
The old wall was cinder block and it was unstable. It was all broken up, and it was a significant amount of money, as you can imagine, to move cinder block and blacktop from the lake up 2 levels into a 3rd level onto the driveway to haul it out of there.
So you left it there?
No, I hauled it out of there.
Okay.
You're looking at her picture.
That's probably just off the property line, or right at the property line, the old wall.
And it must have-
That's not there. That's not like that anymore.
That's what it was like last week.
That's much better than this.
Yeah, this whole area is not all of my property. I end where the fence is.
Okay.
There's some, you know, that's not on my property, and it's not from my property. I also have the letter from the civil engineer saying that it's done and it's,
So the question is on the vegetation, though. That stable.
So the patio's rebuilt and the wall redone, so, which was not part of the original permit approval, so I think that just needs to be addressed in the certificate of compliance, whatever.
This was that cinder block wall. This was the wall.
And then there was just the issue about whether you're concerned about that corner where it's unstabilized.
So are you considering that final stable?
no, that shows the jute netting. On top of the jute netting, there are other pictures that are, I got emails from Ms. Green saying that I needed to be grown in,
When
and
was this
vegetation.
picture taken?
That was taken probably in July,
Okay.
early July. I had mulch put on top because weeds overtook the hill and it looked terrible. So I had mulch, brown mulch put on top to prevent the weeds from just being random weeds like they are in the adjacent property.
Was there a planting plan submitted?
There was not, it was gonna be some sort of a vine or something, vegetation planted to stabilize the hillside.
Yeah. It did say English ivy. I could not source enough English ivy. So I did some English ivy at the top, and I did Russian sage because the botanist told me that that was a good holder of soil and would get bushy.
And when was that planted? I recognize it was, the photo was taken in July. When was that planted?
Probably mid-June.
Okay.
And I added plants sort of as I went along.
Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, are there any weak poles in this, in here to take care of the water?
Anyway,
Weak poles or anything so it doesn't push out the, so when water comes down and gets behind it, where does the water go? Is there places where it can come out?
I don't know.
So as it doesn't push the wall over the corners?
Yeah, the wall's secured to, there's timbers inside the original, like big thick ones, and they attach to those. What it was in the past was like lumpy asphalt. It was not a, you know, a pristine surface by any
My only
stretch.
question is stability, where it's only just been done one season.
Yeah, we usually look through,
Well, that's
for-
through a
for
growing
mitigation.
season. So you have, a lot of times with plantings, you've got a 30% rate that doesn't live. And so many times when something is recently planted, we want to make sure it's stabilized in order to secure that hill for you as well.
There's pictures of the hill also in the winter. That hill's been that hill for 30 years. The winter was when they installed the septic system, and he ripped out the existing stairs. So the hill was without any way for me to access the house until the snow melted. In the snow picture, you can see footprints going down.
Amy, do you want a commissioner to go out and look at it?
It might be a good idea.
Okay. So what we'll do is we'll have a commissioner go out. We can schedule a time that you might be there, or it's just if you're allowed commissioner to go on with notice to be able to just do that.
Okay, and the civil engineer report you got that says it's stable and,
That's great, but a commissioner still needs to go out.
okay,
So,
Yeah, we just need to confirm.
yep.
I'm sorry?
We just have to
need
confirm.
Ah.
conditions.
Would you like to be there at that time, or would you like for a commissioner just to be able to go? It's up to you.
Well, I sold the property,
Okay.
so I'm just here because, I don't know why I'm here. I thought I was here to show you how great the property looks and how stable it is and support the civil engineer who's the qualified person. So if you'd like to go visit it, you'd have to speak to the new owners,
Okay.
I would
Do they
imagine.
do they know you're seeking a completion?
Yes,
Certificate.
yeah.
Okay.
And that's a 3-year expiration, yeah.
Well, it sounds like we have to get in touch, or if you would like to relay the message for...
Yeah, can you put us in touch with the new owner?
I can have my realtor do that.
Okay.
Okay.
Can I have my pictures back?
Oh, of course. Maybe the only thing.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Request for certificate of compliance, 32 Middlesex, 204-820.
That also had some changes, and he's getting some new plans done, so that's not ready tonight.
Okay. Upcoming request for certificate of compliance, 27 Fort Pond Hill Road.
I didn't know if anybody wanted to pre-walk that, but I think just wait for the request.
I'll
and
go
the
wait till
as-built
we
to
get the
come in.
request and then the as-bills. So I'm happy to go back there, we just need the as-bills and the request.
Lake Maniwaki drawdown.
Oh, just to let you know, they're gonna be doing their drawdown.
There. So they're gonna do their construction then?
It's the regular drawdown, it's not anything related to anything else, but they have a very nice letter in here reminding people also that if they're doing anything around there, they need to apply, so That was just a FYI.
They already started?
I don't think they started.
Think
Yeah,
I-
because Spectacle Pond was releasing, and then after Spectacle Pond's done, they start on the Matawanaki.
It will start on or soon after October 15th,
There you go.
and the lake will refill by the end of March.
Maybe
Or the
for
next
tonight.
day, so it's.
Okay, any other updates for administrative action?
I've got some stuff that can wait to the end if you want.
Okay. 7:45 PM, public meeting request for determination of applicability subject trustees, property at Wickham Ave, R13-5-06070 and 80 for habitat improvement, invasive species management. Somebody gonna speak to that?
Yes, I'm Laura Matei. I'm the Director of Stewardship at Sudbury Valley Trustees. The Smith Conservation Land we purchased in February, and on 26 acres approximately, we have a lot of bittersweet and some other invasive plants, and we would like to control those. We were originally proposing a combination of mechanical and chemical methods as recommended by the NRCS, and it's a method we've used before. Many of our neighbors have expressed concerns about that, so we're deferring any chemical use for the time being until we can both look into other methods that might work on bittersweet, or just their concerns about the specific chemicals. And it would be important for us at this juncture to understand where the commission is on the request for determination of applicability, so we know what our next steps are with project planning.
So it's mainly invasive plant control?
Yeah, it's primarily oriental bittersweet, but there's a lot of garlic mustard, Dame's Rocket, and narrowleaf bittercress. Oriental bittersweet is the hardest one to deal with for the most part.
And it's within the 100?
So some of the areas are within the wetlands jurisdiction area, and some of them aren't. So this is the Beaverbrook Marshes here, down here. So these areas are within the buffer zone.
So within the 50 or within the 100 or what?
Try 200.
200? Oh, front 200?
Yeah, I guess depending on where the brook is, you know, over here it would be further, over here it would be closer. At this peninsula it would be closer.
Because we've got a policy within the buffer zone of organic pesticides.
Mhm.
Have you looked into that?
What are organic pesticides that you've used?
Certified, or, well, they're the ones recommended by the Northeast Organic Farmers Association.
Yeah, I can find out what they recommend if they've used anything on bittersweet.
Yeah, I'm not positive what works best on bittersweet
Yeah.
organically, but
So is that one of the conditions you're talking about?
yeah, we usually have that condition in the 100.
Yeah, I didn't really think about that in terms of invasives. I always targeted that to lawn control.
No, well, it would be for both, I would
Yeah.
think. At least
We
our
want to see if
preference
it's,
would be for
see
to
if it's
first
effective
look at
because
that.
it is so robust.
Better to use something that's effective and do it once than something that takes 2 or 3 doses.
But this I looked into, I have information on the trilacquer, what they were planning on using, and it's very soluble, but it looks, so it would dissolve, it contacts water, it dissolves in water and is mobile. The only where its location is not mobile is in the soil. So if they're careful, and it looks like what they were planning to do is apply it when there's no rain. So and then there's the primary pesticide has a half-life of about 48 days, 48 to 100 days, and then but it has another TCP, which is a breakdown product of trichlopor that lasts at least a year. So it does say it's effective on bittersweet much more so than the like Roundup. So it is an effective pesticide. if it is within the 50 particularly, we probably would, I would say, prefer at least look into organic pesticides first, and then,
Sure.
you know, if there's none that would work. At least that's my recommendation.
And in terms of like habitat improvement, what would that entail on the site?
That is a good question. So a lot of this area is old field and some single tree plantation. So there's red pine, dying red pine. There's tamarack that right now, European tamarack, that's still in good condition, but there's a ton of bittersweet in the understory. And over time, in terms of climate change and resiliency of that kind of a species, it would be good over time to diversify that tree stand. In the open areas, we have more ability to maintain it just as, you know, a grassland meadow. That's easy to do. In this area where the dying red pine stand is, there's actually quite a bit of sugar maple, and our hope is to over time convert that to sugar maple and other hardwood oak species. Yeah.
And is that just through plantings, like supplementally? I can't even talk.
No. That's it. Most of the time, you're not going to plant unless you see you need to.
Okay.
So you'll see what comes up in the seed bank. We have a forester who's been working this property for many years. He knows it better than I do. So he prepared the forest management plan here, and I'm working with him on this project as well.
Which forester is that?
Robbins, am I
Yeah,
remembering his name correctly?
Carl,
Yes.
yeah, it's good. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
So actually, kind of cut out some of the understory that's undesirable and let the sugar maple grow?
That's the idea. And other native species that are in there.
Do you want to entertain questions?
Hmm?
Do you want to entertain
Anybody
questions?
got any questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
Well-
If you want to come up or just
State your
announce
name.
who you are, just for
My
the
name
public.
is Kiefer Walsh. I live at 189 Wickham. I'm in a butter to the property. The Smith's property, the Smith's conservation property abuts 3 sides of my property. And first, I think it's important to say that we're really grateful as abutters that you're taking our concerns into considerations, that you're beginning to look into alternatives. We're very, very grateful for that collaboration, but also for that you're hearing our concerns. I think that under these circumstances, as a neighbor, as an abutter, my own request would be that that the Conservation Commission would approve the RDA, and that there would be a request for Sudbury Valley trustees to file a notice of intent, so that as abutters we have more information. There are concerns about the potential impact on human health for residents and abutters based on publicly available toxicology studies that have found increased tumors in female rats exposed to triclophor. The lack of specificity as to how much triclophor would be released into the site, and the potential for contamination of the water table, which has been a documented effect of usage discussed in California, as well as the possible, and I know that you guys are starting to look into this, and again, I'm really appreciative, but the possible existence of alternative remediation strategies that may be more suitable, safer, and in the long term equally safe and effective for the Smith site. So those are my concerns as an abutter, as an owner of livestock, as somebody with children, and as an expectant parent.
Anybody else?
Good. I too am in abutter. We live, Kristen Ferrante, we live at 200 Wickham Ave. I run a family child care. My property abuts the field that we're talking about, and my concern is the use of chemicals, you know, I mean, we have wildlife that comes traipsing right through the field, right into my yard. I take care of children, you know, cross-contamination, and my well is right there, and I don't want any of this chemicals running into my well, so I too also am opposed to using chemicals. If there are other means that we could get rid of whatever needs to get rid of in a different fashion.
Gary Austin, 162 Wickham Ave. I think my concern is also the chemicals, but how many trees are we talking about removing? Well, you know, there's some dying trees.
So the Oriental bittersweet and the invasives are one part of the project. And then in terms of the red pine, the
Yeah.
dying red pine, we've removed virtually all of them.
And how many is that,
I haven't counted them.
roughly?
I honestly,
Is it
I'd
gonna
have
clear the
to.
field?
Pardon?
Is it gonna clear that whole area?
So it's the one area, I don't know how well you know the property, where it's solid red pine.
Right.
There's one rectangle. So it would be that area, taking out all of the red pine. There are some other smaller trees in there that will stay. And any other native vegetation, the idea is to have that come up there.
Could you point it out on the map that you have there?
Sure.
Feel free to come up.
This is the edge of the Beaver Brook wetlands. Okay, so Beaver Brook is at the top here. And this bluish, can you see the bluish rectangle? That's the area of the red pines.
And that's Moore Lane directly across from that,
Moore Lane is
Yeah,
right
yes.
here. Yep, this is Moore
Exactly.
Lane, yep.
And can I weigh in because my property abuts
Yes, of
exactly
course.
there? I will say that so many of those trees they're very tall and they're in very bad shape. That we will not let our 4 children or their friends play in that area whatsoever because they seem like an actual hazard because of how many of them are dying, how many of them are in the process of collapsing.
Yeah.
Dale Platinum, I'm also no butter. How long would that project take to clear out the trees and how much noise would be involved?
I'd have to ask the forester, but having worked on something somewhat similar, I think they can do that within 1 week. But again, I'd need to ask him, exactly how long that would take. And they use something called a feller buncher usually, but I'll have to, again, make sure that that's what they'd be using. And it does make that really awful, nasty, whirring noise.
It's hard because some of those are brittle.
Yeah.
And maybe hazardous, so
Yeah.
that mechanical
Yeah.
may not be able to be used
Yeah,
all the
so-
time.
yeah, I'll
So the
have to
forester
find
would have
out
to
what-
defer to that, because
Yeah.
it basically
Yeah.
picks them up, cuts them off, but they could collapse.
Hi, Steve Ruskak, 170 Wickham Avenue, also an abutter.
Mhm.
I'm just curious, when they do the tree cutting, will they mark the trees, or is it up to them to choose?
No, actually, in this case, it's just the red pine, and it's very identifiable. It's the only one that looks like it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so they don't need to mark them.
So they're not going to
just
cut
take
anything
them all
else
out.
accidentally?
No, they wouldn't. I've worked with, good foresters before. But the problem is, though, that there's going to be some of the other trees that, there'll be some collateral damage
Understood.
just because maneuvering.
Sure.
Yeah.
Rick Finley, 46 Beaver Brook Road, and Littleton Conservation Trust. I've been on the trust since 1975 and working on poison ivy in the beginning, and then I've watched the invasives, the non-native invasives come in and realized to take care of our land, it was going to require herbicides. And I have been a certified pesticide applicator since it was required, basically, because I knew we needed somebody in town to do it. In this particular case, the tractor repair, we've been using it on a regular basis on conservation land, but not as an extensive thing like this, except for Cloverdale, which you may be familiar with, is a project that we've been cleaning up, and that we did with grant money and whatnot. But that was basically very similar to what Laura's proposing for the Smith property. but it's very professionally done and not a threat to the water table, I don't believe, or anything there.
So a chemical was used on Cloverdale?
Oh, yes, definitely. That was put out to bid, I think there was a $40,000 contract to do that work. I mean, it was a significant project.
Thank you. Judy Gallagher, 168 Wickham. A question.
Sure.
In any of the areas that any of the conservation land areas within Littleton that you've treated, has there been any subsequent tests of the groundwater in those areas, over time to see if there's been an effect?
Well, we generally haven't been dealing with areas close to groundwater, so it's not, but this, it does not move particularly. I mean, Roundup is something that doesn't move, it binds to soil particles. The triclopyr can move if you are doing it right next to a stream, which you're not supposed to do, so you wouldn't do it.
Yeah, it hurts. It's very toxic to fish.
Yeah.
I think it's not toxic to most fish except for salmon, but very toxic to algae.
We can take a look at that.
It's toxic to algae and fish, apparently, well, from what I read. And it's toxic to dogs.
Right, which also raises questions about the coyotes that live there because of being.
Do you know which form of triclopyr we're planning on using? Acid, salt, ester?
The one consultant for whom we have this proposal was going to use the Garline 3A, and I'd have to look and see which it is based on that sheet.
Yeah. Because if it was the ester, then it would be moderately to highly toxic, but otherwise non-toxic. So.
Yeah.
Nate Clements, 20 More Lane, also in the letter, just on the other side.
I'm sorry, what's your name again?
Nate Clements.
Thanks.
Do you have a question, sir?
David Murray, 169 Whitcomb. My concern here is what we haven't mentioned, the quantity of triclopyr that is going to be used at one application, and then it's going to be used year after year, is my understanding.
The RDA will be for one of them.
Small amounts, as a pharmacologist, small amounts are not particularly a problem. But if we're talking about large amount,
But if you're doing an RDA,
many
it would just be one
kilograms of it,
application.
then it is a concern. So what I would like
Yeah.
to see is,
Right.
how much of this are we
Right.
going to be applying
Right.
on the 25 acres?
Right, yeah.
And we're going to be near, in part of it, we're going to be near the wetlands. And that does have the threat of being washed into the wetlands. The wetlands is highly dependent upon algae, and this chemical is quite toxic to algae. So we don't want to upset
Amy, if
that
we were doing an
ecosystem.
RDA, it would just be for one application, correct?
Well, it'd probably be good for 3 years, which would cover,
The,
could potentially make whatever you want to.
the way it's
thought it was
typically done is the first year you do intensive mechanical work, cutting, removal, and you cut and dab directly
Yeah.
on a stem, which helps
that's
reduce
probably
the
not a problem.
quantity. And then where there's areas where there were smaller plants with regrowth, there's typically a foliar spray that goes right on that. I wouldn't expect it to be running off in wetlands because it wouldn't be done when it's raining and it gets absorbed by the plant. And then I'd have to refer to those data sheets that we've been looking at in terms of how it does or doesn't move through the soil.
But a foliar spray would. The dog method would go directly into the river. But a foliar spray would have, would take some time and could blanket the whole area.
So the
rain would be important.
So the foliar spray is done in low wind conditions and no precipitation, and it actually does bind right away to the leaves. So it's not getting in, and obviously it's the less preferred method because you do, it's the next level up where you might have a little bit of chemical getting around. But I've been impressed with how they've improved on the technology of using a small backpack sprayer and getting it right on the plant.
And just Garland 3A is the salt form, not
Okay,
the ester
thanks.
form, so.
So
that
that's
are
the
in-
worst one?
Esther would be the worst, the
Oh,
worst case
Esther was the worst,
scenario.
okay.
And the other ones, once in water,
Mhm.
the photo degrade fairly quickly. The half-life is 1 day. So,
That's right, it did say it needs light, yeah.
and it doesn't actually need water, in light degrades as well, so.
But that's the half-life, so it's still half the amount left.
We'll never get there, but.
Right.
I guess the big question here tonight is whether you want to go with a determination of applicability or full notice of intent. That's what I'm hearing.
Well, if the plan is not to apply pesticides at this time, you're just going to do mechanical.
But I think they're going to, well, if there's nothing,
Yeah,
left,
but
they cut it
we'll
off,
need
they're
to
going to dab
see.
the stems.
No, they're
So-
saying that they're not going
Right
to do that
now.
at this time.
Right at this time, we won't do any chemicals because I'd like to address some of the concerns and the information that the neighbors are providing to us.
My question is, what are you going to do with the debris you pull out?
Usually, we'll just pile it up in one place.
And let it dry out?
Yeah.
Fry in the sun?
Or burn
It's
it?
just,
In the
that's a whole other permitting process.
Well,
But yes.
what are you going to do with the trees you cut
Yeah.
off? You going to chip them?
Oh, the trees
No,
are
she's
going to
talking
go
about the
off-site.
bittersweet, what they're gonna do mechanically.
Yeah,
If
but
there's
the-
some that they can do mechanically.
Yeah.
But what are you going to do with the trees they want, the pines they want to?
Those will go, the harvesters will take those.
Yeah.
The red pine,
Oh,
that'll-
we'll chip them.
those will go separately. Those will just
Yeah,
leave
that
and
would be
get
a
chipped.
separate operation.
Yeah, so I think in terms of the invasives, how they're gonna mechanically remove that and no treatment, would we let them just go ahead and do that? And I mean, I feel comfortable with that. I'm inclined not to keep waiting on that because it's just, it's so,
It's gotta be done.
it's just grows
Would
so
that be
quickly.
done before the winter?
Mechanical work can be done anytime.
Okay.
Yes?
So in the event that there's full ventilation of concerns and research of you know, what other municipalities are doing, what other options are, long-term, short-term, it seems important also that the community have clarity about if there was a decision in the future to
Oh,
use
yes.
chemical methodology
yes.
and
Yes.
that there's accountability
And we
there.
can come back to the commission to make sure they're, obviously, because right now you're talking about mechanical or not, but
Mhm.
if that's something different, then
So,
I don't know if it's possible for you to make a determination about the mechanical and the chemical, like separately, like to provide that guidance on each
I
of
think
those.
using the chemical is going to be more complicated.
Right,
Whereas if you wanted to get going,
Right.
we could probably
Okay.
say do the mechanical
Okay.
and get it
yeah.
moving.
And then I could come back.
Excuse me.
Yeah, sorry.
Laura, I don't think you would be wanting to be cutting the bittersweet mechanically without applying the herbicide.
Yes, yes.
Oh, because we run the
That's true.
opportunity to,
It's, then you're just gonna get root sprouts
Yeah,
everywhere.
that's
and
true.
it's,
Yeah.
you're gonna end up with more spraying.
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and more
Much more
roads,
spraying.
yeah.
But there may be some areas where we could do a more intensive job. And I am meeting with someone from an environmental consulting firm who claims that he thinks he can handle bittersweet without chemicals, so I'm gonna check it out.
When do you have, when do you have that meeting?
Tomorrow morning.
Can we continue this conversation to the next meeting and see what she takes in?
Great Barrington, Beckett.
Do any you want to?
So my request would be based on your
Mhm.
conversation tomorrow.
Mhm.
We meet every 2 weeks.
Mhm.
And so I would feel comfortable tabling this conversation for 2 weeks and see if you can come back to us with anything that's more definitive. And I agree with Rick, and thank you for sharing with that it's probably best not to cut it. I do hate to put this on hold,
No,
but to
that's-
try
I
and come up
understand.
with something that we can do collaboratively. And it sounds like we would go for notice of intent if we're using any pesticides, so that way we're very clear of applications and what the process is. But I do have to say that we really need to try and find some solution quickly.
You're gonna kill more trees
So,
by not touching them than you're worried about the red pines.
yeah.
So,
Now, if there was mechanical removal without the dab method, would it be a different approach then? If you weren't gonna dab, would you yank?
So the only
Well,
thing, so
I mean,
nobody
yeah.
I know,
Yeah.
quite honestly, unless it's
Stone
a,
front, pretty
Yeah,
sorry, he was
good.
no, that's okay, unless it's a really small area where you can constantly pull and yank,
Can't.
no one I
So
know
strong.
has been able to control it.
Yeah.
I was able to get into touch with someone in Wayland who, he said it's been pretty brutal. For the last year, literally, he works for the town. He's been working on an area that's 15 feet by 40 feet that he's worked on removing bittersweet. So
That's a small percentage versus
It's-
out here.
yeah, so it's really, so I'm very interested to see what this other person has to say.
Right. But I think we have to think of manpower and finances as well, for sure. Okay.
So why don't you,
and also the overall, really, I mean, the chemicals, especially if it's salt form, if it's a garland 3A, it's gonna break down before it really causes any harm, as far as I can see, based on this research.
Yeah, were you looking at the risk assessment, 2011? I have this,
I'll take a look.
Syracuse Environmental Research Associates, they say that neither terrestrial nor aquatic applications of triclopyr TEA pose substantial risk to aquatic animals across the range of labeled application rates. Triclopyr BEE, however, is much more toxic than triclopyr TEA.
Right, we're not talking.
So I'm not sure what kind
Mhm,
you're talking about.
mhm.
But the triclopyr BEE is less
Yes.
toxic to aquatic animals.
why don't you let them, I would suggest that you, after your discussion, decide whether you want to do a full notice of intent.
Sure.
And just get it
Sure.
done and get
Right.
it beyond, so
Yep,
you can.
absolutely.
But I would suggest try and get back to us for the next meeting with answers.
Okay.
So I'm sorry, so that was potentially finish off this RDA for the mechanical piece of it and do a new filing.
I don't think we can do mechanical without application.
Well,
I think
that's
based
what-
on-
find out.
So I think we're probably another step beyond the next meeting.
Are you handling the
So-
trees and the bittersweet as two separate issues
Yes.
at this point?
Mhm.
Okay.
Well, I'm also curious, I think most of those trees might not be even in your jurisdiction.
Oh,
Some of them are.
The red pine.
Some of them are.
There was one other question with the trees. Supposedly you can girdle the vines if they're going up into the trees and killing the trees. That is not with any herbicide.
You can just cut the vine.
Right. Do you
Correct.
do that?
Yeah, we've done that.
The biggest
Yeah.
concern with doing that is you leave if you've ever pulled bittersweet, you have this immense root structure.
Yes.
Which is then the plant's ability to grow thousands of
Right.
more shoots that then grow up into huge vines very quickly,
Mhm.
and it gets even harder. So that's why we're talking about the cutting and then dabbing with the herbicide to kill it directly.
Even for the ones that grow up the trees? Yeah.
They all grow
Yeah.
up trees.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
we also have gnats.
Oh.
You know, so,
Yeah.
It's another problem.
yeah.
okay.
So is there an application already in for the
No.
determination at this?
Well, yeah, they've applied for the RDA.
Well,
That's
for the
been,
RDA, yeah.
that's what this
They'd
meeting
have
was
to
open for.
modify, they'd have to take some of that out if we want to just, you could do that and just talk about the trees right now. They can modify that and just have for the RDA the trees.
Oh, maybe wait until the next meeting.
I can do it all in one. If we go to a notice of intent, I could just put it all together.
That might be a better.
Yeah,
that's fine.
so we do a positive determination tonight and then start a notice of intent for the next meeting?
No, just till she comes back.
Let's just keep it
for the
open.
next meeting.
Yeah, because there's
All right.
not going to be time to do a notice of intent for the next meeting.
Right.
All right.
So it
Doesn't have time?
No.
No.
No. But we can have a discussion to make sure that it's all good discussion to put you in the right direction for that filing.
And if the person you're talking to tomorrow that has an idea to remove, maybe that would be an option as well.
Yeah, I'll see what he says.
Okay, then we can look into organic.
Okay, we've got to move along.
Great, thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Continued public hearing, notice of intent, 9 Eel Road, U 43-3-0, Mass DEP file number 2.
Could you make sure that you signed in?
898, constructing of 2 driveways, 3 houses, and utility connection.
No, stick around. I said we can all go home now, right?
Well, I thought they were going to be fast, so I put them on, first, and then all of a sudden everyone's not taking fast. Oh, there it is.
We're here.
Good, yeah, they got rid of a whole bunch of them.
What time of year do you do that?
Guess it was
Nice to
this
meet
time.
you. Nice to
When I
meet
finally got around to cleaning up around the edges of the field.
Because I would think that would be after it's already born seed, and then, so you get that spread from the seed.
I didn't see it come back, which kind of surprised me. But I pulled the roots and all.
What'd you use?
When I do that too, I do that.
Tractor with a
No,
stone
no,
truck.
for chemical.
I didn't.
You just yanked it with the roots.
Took it right out with the tractor.
I always just yank it too.
The other thing is you might check with Harvard.
You guys can come on up 9 Air Road.
There you go.
Yep. Yeah, they got a grant to spray a
Welcome back.
lot of the
Thank you.
Williams crop.
Hello.
And I think it's the same stuff.
Yeah, probably because it seems like the most effective thing.
Are we ready?
Yep.
Okay. So we submitted some additional information last week, and we did 3 things in response to, I shouldn't put that, in response to the meeting 2 weeks ago. The first thing we did was to show, and I outlined these in the letter. First thing we did was to do an inventory of the trees within the in the buffer zone. So it's a wooded area, so we provided a table. So we have a key for those trees with the table, and we've indicated which ones would be saved, both in the table, but also we bolded out the ones to show you visually which ones can be saved based on the proposed grading. Secondly, to go along with that, we provided a planting plan to replace some of the loss. I apologize, I did not have a chance to get this colored up today, but this just shows the same area at a larger scale. And it shows the trees that would be saved in bold, and then it shows the proposed plantings. And we've tried to vegetate the entire buffer zone area, with the exception of the area within the right-of-way, which we can't vegetate due to the fact that it's a state highway. And then, of course, the stormwater management areas, we're not proposing any planting within there either. This is a rather steep slope here, so we're proposing, rather than plant trees there, we're proposing to restore that with a meadow mix, with a natural mix that would be from something like a New England wet plants meadow mix that would have some native species in there to get that slope established with a more naturalized species.
So is that slope all getting stripped out?
Correct, yes.
How far from the road up the slope? What's the distance to the setback?
To the 100, you'll
To the 100 foot?
100 foot, that's what
To the 100 foot. From the road up,
It's gonna be all the way at the top of the,
They won't.
not quite. The 100-foot buffer zone is about halfway up the slope. It varies a little bit as you go down that frontage, but.
Okay. Where's the 50 line then?
The 50 is,
Dotted line.
it's the dotted line right there.
Oh.
If I could- That's the 50. Right there.
So that must be the right-of-way for the road, pretty near.
Yeah, the right-of-way is this solid line right there. So the 50 is completely contained within the right-of-way.
Sorry, what were the tree species to be replaced?
So we've got some white pines that we're proposing flanking the driveways, and then the bulk of it would be oak species, because that's what's prominently on that hill. So we thought we'd replace them with similar species.
And you've got a planting plan of like how diameter for them? And
Yeah, we're proposing, we have the calipers here, we're proposing a 1-inch caliper at plant. We've got the quantities pulled out, 4 to 6 foot on the white pines. So yeah, this plan was dedicated for that
You
purpose.
probably want a large 2-inch caliper.
Yeah, 1 inch is not suitable. Way too small for that.
Like a ball and burlap, like a B&B oak, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, we'd be doing with a root ball.
Yeah, like a 2.5 inch.
Have to be bigger than an inch.
Yeah, absolutely.
So above the 100 foot, we only regulate to the 100, but
That would be restored with
above the 100, it's everything goes, right?
Correct. Yeah. And we'd be restoring that with topsoil and seed.
They just need to make sure it doesn't
Conventional.
slide into it.
So to that end,
Very steep.
Go ahead.
yeah, well, it'll be less steep when we're done. We're
'Cause you're
we're
cutting,
relaxing
yeah.
those slopes, right? So the third thing that we provided, which dovetails into that erosion control, is we did provide you with a stormwater management report. That seemed to be a topic of discussion last time, so we went ahead and provided you with a stormwater report that documents compliance with the 10 stormwater standards. So one of those standards is, of course, erosion control. And this site will require the preparation of a SWIP. So that would be done in accordance with the EPA requirements prior to construction. But we've documented to you the pre-developed runoff and compared them with the post-developed runoff. We've provided the total suspended solids calculation, TSS removal calculations, water quality calculations, recharge calculations, and the like. So we just went through and documented all those.
And what's
which I
the,
believe is what you're asking for.
what's the surface of your swales or your?
These would be grassed swales, and similar here, grassed.
It's just grassed, okay.
Yes.
All right,
yeah.
and those are,
These
what are
here?
those, these,
Those little things there, those are stone check dams.
oh, check it.
So that would function as a sediment forebay in the front, same thing here. So any place where you have the swale coming in, that would function
Are
as
you
a
going to have some
pre-treatment.
check dams coming down the slope?
You know, you
Just
asked me for
gonna
that, and I
ask
didn't
to-
add those to the plan, but we certainly could. I apologize for that.
Them on that grade.
Yeah, and it's not a bad idea because it'll encourage the infiltration.
So how
Or
many?
terracing.
Yeah, it kind of just.
How many are you anticipating adding to that?
So I typically would put those every, not so much horizontal spacing as much as I usually put them every couple vertical feet. So that if you have a 1.5 check dam, you have you get that storage behind it. So on a steeper slope, they'd be closer together. And we could certainly show
So
those.
getting back to the question, how many do you think you'd have? I mean, you know your grades.
Well, roughly one every contour, so, because these are 2-foot contours, so I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You'd probably have like 5 or 6 on this driveway. You'd probably have more on this driveway because it would be, it's a little steeper. So you might have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 or 9 on that driveway.
On both sides?
Yeah, on each side, 8 or 9 on each side.
For sure.
Yeah. That's something we don't have a problem providing.
Where that's going to be located. That can just be a separate detail that you add. Certainly place them, but add the construction of what they're.
Yep.
I was kind of curious, is there any understory on the slope that if you took the big ones out, you wanted to take out, but they're already established?
Like where, Jim?
Where, within the 100?
Yeah, I mean, if there's, could be some smaller stuff that's already, just once you take the big stuff out, it'll give it light to
Strip it
start to
down.
grow.
Yeah, but I
But they
think
need
that
to take them out.
Stripping it down.
the only way they can
Yeah, we're gonna-
access,
They're all gonna have
they're
to
cutting into the slope.
Yeah, but not with other than the driveway.
The whole thing.
The whole
No, the
thing.
whole thing.
I
But why,
understand
but
that.
you're saying trees are being retained though?
Huh?
Some
There are
in that
some
plan.
trees on the edges that are being retained, and if we
Yeah.
can save some of the smaller ones, we can.
I mean, they've already established a root mass.
Yeah. Is there a protection zone that's gonna be around the trees to make sure they're not
You'd have to
driven
put like
over by
construction fencing.
We could do that, we could do a construction fence over on this area, right around that whole clump and this clump.
So we could just give them
That guidance that we had at the other meeting, it shows, because that root structure obviously isn't right next to the tree, it goes out.
Yeah.
to the-
Here's our kind of standard that we've been handing out for
Yep.
tree protection zones.
Yep.
Should be implemented, or else the, again, the roots
So
will be
1 foot per inch, yeah.
destroyed, yeah.
Okay.
Pretty typical BMPs.
Yeah, I mean, we could show you, we could add a protection.
Yeah, and then to
Fence on
Jim's
there.
point, if there's stuff already existing in there, leave it, and that retains the vegetation and root mass and holds the water down.
Yeah, I mean, our intent would be to, we picked up the larger trees, I think we picked up, I told the guys to pick up everything over 6 inches, just because if we got the 4s and the 2s, it would be a lot. But there's certainly some understory, to your point, smaller stuff within here that we could certainly save, that we can,
Every bit helps.
we can just identify a barrier, protection zone barrier, and save everything inside that, including the larger trees.
Yeah.
And then the point, where we have to strip the slopes, that's where we propose
That's
the
a different
revegetation.
story. That's
Yeah.
But I'm saying,
Yeah.
well, you got stuff already there, why
Yep. We can,
reinvent it?
we could do that.
What
If
was your
you
grass
s-
mix that you called for on that slope?
This here,
Mm.
we're specifying the New England wetlands meadow mix.
Why would you want a gravelly slope to that?
I don't
Well,
think it'll stick on that.
I was trying to do something native.
Oh, but
No,
I
but
said
I
that.
don't think that's gonna hold that bank.
Well, it's a,
Well,
It's not gonna hold it.
it's a 1-on-3 slope. It's not we're not proposing something that's,
okay.
overly steep. We're not proposing like a 1-on-2 that you'd really start to get into an issue with that.
Do you have jute or something to hold it in the meantime before it gets established?
I mean, you could if if the commission was
It's gonna
to.
get sprayed.
We
probably.
hydroseeded with,
Hydroseed.
tackifier.
Tackifier,
Yeah,
yeah.
tackifier mulch.
Yeah,
think
it'll
that would
definitely
be-
have to get sprayed, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have my own hydroseed intact. We add tackifier to everything.
What's the sight distance for the cars pulling out of there? Looks like it might be a little dangerous.
No, it's a really good sight distance. It's in excess of 500 feet in both directions, which would be well in excess of that, actually. So
That's
it's
if you
pretty-
get a chance to pull out.
Well,
Yeah.
we have a light, there's a light there, so you got that going for you. There's a light down, coming that direction, but,
So pulling out of there, cars gonna be able to see.
yeah, there's pretty good sight distance.
Yeah, but you're on a slope, so you're cutting into the slope.
Well, we come down and then we flatten out so that the car can be flat as it's queuing for the, to turn, make that turn.
That's in the winter after it slides down into the.
So the
road.
person that owns it should have their home office there. All right, so let's go back for the things that need to be noted on the plan going forward. So we, just in discussion, so your tree diameter has to increase, your zone of your trees, you will use some construction
Protection
fencing
zone,
on that. Also to go ahead and put your checks
Yeah.
coming down both driveways on both sides, to go ahead and just put them on the plan of what that's gonna look like and where. So those are 3 that I can recall.
Do we want pines planted necessarily?
It would help.
There's a few
Is that-
pine,
You want
have-
a shallow rooted species in there?
Well, that one would be
Pretty far
on the
away from-
base here. I think it was where the pines were gonna be.
yeah, we basically flank the driveways with them. I was just trying to be, there's a few pines out there, so again, we tried to kind of,
I would,
there's more
I don't
more oaks
think
than
the
pines.
town
but-
needs more pines necessarily.
Well,
Well, yeah, but I like the kind of the mix right now for that, again, the stability, like you said, something's gonna shoot up kind of
Quick.
root faster, the oaks aren't gonna grow as quickly. So the idea of taking the natives and doing the mix is a good idea. I'd probably recommend doing some sort of a staggering of them too, just so it's not kind of in a straight line going with the slope, but if you make it more of a...
With the pines, you
like
mean?
just
Or
trees
all
in
of
general,
them?
if you have them, as it's essentially like a green organic, catch basin. It's going to slow the water. It's going to do all the things that you want to do with the green infrastructure that's being implied, being utilized. It's useful, and we want to get those roots to revegetate and hold, So just probably.
Do you want to let him?
Putting
Wanna
this
write on it? Yeah, I'd love-
drawing on that
I'd
one.
love for you to draw. Here.
Give a suggestion.
This is. Oh, so you do it? These are the ones you're putting in?
Yes.
Okay, good. That's what I looked. That's the intention. Yeah.
But there may be some that are already there that would come.
Right.
If they're careful.
Well, they're regrading.
Right.
The one on the
It's only on this
left,
side
they keep
and that.
established. Left and far right are staying established, so
And
we'll
then
keep a
anything
root
along
zone.
here? Or no?
Maybe
That's where I'm
mix-
doing that's what I was proposing, that meadow mix. I mean, if we could certainly do the trees. it's just on
This is
slopes.
good, and just
Maybe
add a little bit
alternate
here.
with a, pine, oak, pine or something
I
instead
wouldn't
of,
put pine in.
well, pine, conifers
talking about
help
quick
the deciduous, they help each
Yeah.
other,
Yep.
Especially in the bushy stage.
yeah.
Anything else?
We also have, they have to be growing, otherwise we have to replace them.
Right, so this will take
Yeah.
a couple
It
years.
may not be that easy to get the pines growing,
Yeah,
so.
it's true. Do you have some sort of condition, I would expect there's some sort of condition relative to that?
We do have a condition, what is?
It's a 3-year monitoring plan.
3-year monitoring.
3-year?
And you're gonna lose
What I
30%.
did find, we have a tree we got from the light department, and it's amazing how
Yeah.
that's
The red maples.
taken off.
Yeah.
And it's some variety.
They use, I think they're using autumn blaze red maples.
come up from Georgia or someplace. Georgia or the Carolinas, I think, is where they said they got them from.
Let's try to stick with natives.
You could get them here. You could buy a local. Yeah. I mean, there's plenty of red maples here. So.
But I was amazed at how much it's grown in the summer.
Probably doesn't like the hot weather.
But that might be worth looking into what that variety is.
Okay, anything
Yeah.
else for comments on the plans?
Oh, other than snow storage, should we address it at the last meeting? I totally forgot.
Snow storage?
Yeah.
Yeah, we did, and that's now shown on the plan. So it's these hatched areas right here, and then I have a larger area on this side because.
You labeled them on the plan that that's what that is?
Yeah, it is right there.
Okay.
Snow storage. Snow storage. So it'd just be on the shoulders, a conventional, but more snow needed at the entrance to take care of the.
And we're gonna be dealing with salt, because they love to salt that road.
Yeah, that's for sure.
So, I mean, so if you got snow storage, you wanna, which
Is there a
is,
buffer between the snow storage and then that basin?
Well, it would go into the sediment forebay first, and then it would bleed into the swale. So not gonna be much of one. Let's see. But we do have that even right here where, we
then you need to have,
when we have the O&M.
It's in the stormwater report.
Yeah,
Does that address the high salt in there?
that Phragmites sure as hell stays. I'm not sure I want it there, but that would soak up the stuff. It's all across the street.
Yeah, I just don't think we'll be wet enough for it. It's gonna be, we'll be several feet higher, so I'm not sure we'd have wet feet.
No, it's not, but it does, is there some plants that you could make like a rain garden type thing that would soak up the salt? That's one.
Or address it and monitor it for the first couple of years to see through sampling of how bad the salt is, to see if you have to monitor that. It's gonna be high.
Because this is supposed to be a
In terms
grass
of,
swale,
then
right?
you gotta know where the salt is coming from. Is it coming from air? Is it coming from the driveway?
Well, I think it's
Coming right off the highway.
road,
But-
yeah, it's not gonna be coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Plus, how are you gonna change it if it's a problem?
Well, that's, I don't think there's anything we can do about the
Right.
salt issue. I mean, it's the state, we all know what the state does for salt highways, unfortunately, but,
Okay.
so.
Yeah.
When do you think you can have the plans updated?
These are pretty minor, so that, you could have them tomorrow, this week for sure.
That's the next
I mean, I don't
meeting.
know if does the commission,
21st.
would the commission consider conditioning them as conditions of approval?
I don't think so, we've got so many, with the check downs and that. We meet again in 2 weeks.
21st.
21st.
All right, so I have upsized the caliper, add the tree protection barrier, add check dams, and modify my tree planting a little bit. on the
And
slope.
maybe also indicate how you're gonna stabilize, and what mix you're gonna put onto the slopes that.
I think
Well, just say that that'll get
That was in there,
blown in,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
so that it's not gonna be, so you can say that that's gonna get hydro seeded.
You put it in the
and it wouldn't be
notes.
hand-sown.
But you might look for the understory and see how much is there that would,
Well, he's gonna have to do that, because he's gotta create his own.
yeah, I know, but he can at least get a better idea if he can leave some understory there that's already growing.
Mm.
I mean, the smaller ones will grow fast when you take the big ones out. It's just food for thought, and not,
No, I understand that. I just, here, we're lowering the slope, so I can't.
Okay.
really
No,
do
he's
it,
talking more
But
like
here,
over in there.
They're not
but there,
touching
we're not
anyway.
gonna touch
Yeah,
anyway.
We're not talking
So
about-
it'll
Yeah.
just be as,
Yep.
you know, as it is today.
How are you removing the existing house? Where is that, when you remove it, where is that gonna leave the site from?
Maybe access.
Oh, access?
Yeah.
I don't know if we've gotten that far, but I mean.
Well, just
like
when
one
you're
of those.
sequencing, it's number 2 when you're sequencing.
Number one's getting access into the property.
Yeah, I mean, it would, one of the driveways.
Well, number one's
Number one's erosion
install
control.
erosion control. That's not getting access. That's erosion.
So 2
control.
is access, 3 is house removal. So just look at your.
what are you gonna do, start from the top and work down?
From the bottom up.
Bottom up.
So, all right, we can update that for you.
I don't want to access, I don't own that driveway going up there, so
Right.
I don't want to ruin the integrity of the driveway. They just paved it in the last year, so I don't want to go over their driveway with trucks and heavy equipment.
We get
Okay.
it.
All right, we'll push on to the next meeting.
Ray, can I have that tree protection thing back? I'll email it to you.
So what's the caliber of the tree?
The little handout.
He went, he says 1 inch there. and-
So we'll go with the trees.
Driving some soup into your files.
What
Oh,
is-
email the
So-
reviews. My own copy right now.
Right, so 2 inch and above.
I know somebody else wants it
So
too,
it
so.
wouldn't be
Just keep
inch,
it
inch
handy.
and a half.
Yeah,
So 2
I
inch
think I'm
and
not
above.
in the office, but I
Probably
think
the
the next
lowest would
people
be
want
2
it.
inches, typically what you can buy at a nursery
No,
locally.
We don't want anything less than 2 inches.
Right, so
Not
2
the
inch
most,
and above.
nothing less.
Right, yeah.
That's what we're saying.
Exactly, so your minimum is 2 inch when you do your assessment. Okay,
I got it.
Yeah.
all right, thank you.
That's fine.
We're gonna keep going.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate your
you.
time.
Corner, 195 Padawan, 07-10, asking file number 204-899, construction of an open space development including tree clearing, grubbing, grading, construction of subdivision roadways, stormwater management system and septic system, multi-single family dwellings. You see where I'll put that, right?
I did, okay.
I thought it was already gone.
Good evening.
Good evening. You guys can come up whenever you feel like having a look at the plan.
The only people in here? Okay.
Have they changed?
That's what we're about to talk about, just a little bit of change.
Okay.
So, this evening, a couple things. Last time, we talked about the flip-flopping of the septic system, moving the primary area up closer to the road, leaving the reserve area alone and the woods and everything alone down the back. We also looked into and modified our culvert crossing and went from the culvert that we had in there to a 4x8. Brought some sketches. It's 36.
4x8 box.
A 4x8 box. I take that back, a 30 by 48 box.
There today.
30 inch by 48 box.
Flag. I don't think we have to have the full line. Because then we're gonna take them along. if we go, if you go with the bottom, then you're gonna have to have a wider road.
What's the opening at the bottom?
Area's flat, we're-
You mean having
Alright.
the round buried one rather than
Right,
this
if we
one?
go with the one that we want, then we're gonna have to go bigger in terms of the area to support it.
But that will be better in the long run, once it's established. I mean, the disturbance definitely will be more, but I think after it's established, it'll be better.
Right. Chat with me, let me know what it is you want, so that, because I thought I put in what you talked about wanting last time.
No, we're
so-
talking about the culvert.
All right, so.
But I was expressing that if we change to what we wanted, then it's gonna be a larger area of impact
Yeah.
as
But
well.
you'll have a natural bottom, it'll be bird.
So what, if you look at that sketch that I just handed out, we're looking to bury this 6 inches into the ground. The bottom, the invert 6 inches in the ground. So we'll fill the thing in the sections as it's put in. I've done this before. So you put it in the section, you backfill it, you put it in the next section, you backfill it inside, and you work your way right through the thing. We are putting a slope on it, so I think it's got a 1 foot pitch across the length of it. It shows in the cross section there and the elevations.
Do you have an extra copy that we can give to the,
Thank you.
So that will put it in, so it has it, it's 4 feet wide, and it'll be 24 inches clear from the soil to the top. All the storms worked. It worked with the round culvert, but this was something you guys were showing interest in. We looked into, an open bottom, but we also looked closely at where we're crossing. And I don't think you were out on the site, but I think everybody else was. Were you on the site when we did the first one?
I did walk the site.
Okay, so if you look at where the crossing is, there's literally no vegetation there. There's like a down tree.
Right.
And that's pretty much what's there, in the area. So it's not like it's a big vegetated area that we're gonna be dealing with. The other thing to keep in mind is that we're running water and a force main, and those would be buried underneath. So either way, I've got to trench through the area. I can run electric and cable over the top, but I've got to put the sewer and the water underneath. So those things would be going underneath. We've kept the disturbance to the same disturbance. Actually cut it back just a whisker. The big thing that I want to talk about is the replication areas. Carl made a suggestion of potentially moving it out into the meadow. And we talked about the areas that we had marked up. My concern with out into the meadow is that it's the upslope end of a finger, and there's not a big watershed that's going to be coming to it. We're going to be breaking up some of that watershed by the collection of the drainage in the road, and that's going into the basin, and then this has got picking up water along it and going into this basin. So what I'd like to see, and I suggested earlier tonight, is there's a stone wall that comes across here, and a stone wall comes across here around the whole field. And we all know as farm areas go into recession, the trees around the edges, they don't go out as far when they're cutting and tilling each time, and we get some trees around there. Sarah and I looked this evening across these flags here, and up gradient of this in this corner, there's very limited amount of vegetation there that's live. There's a dead tree or so right about in here, a couple with an awful lot of invasives on them that are showing the green area. If we put the bulk of the replication area here, we'll have the discharge when there's larger storms coming out through the slow flow, but we'll have all that water that's coming into here infiltrating in and have the ability of some breakout and being near there. We'd also have to grade this area up to get down closer to the water table. But I think if we put a portion of it there and split and come in and put a portion of it in this area and not take out all the pines. I think there was like 8 big pines in that area when we looked at it. And so if we reduce this number this square footage here from 3,000 square feet down to say 1,800 or 2,000 square feet, and put the balance right up here where we know we have hydrology coming into it, and we know we have hydrology coming into this one from this road after being treated and then going into a discharge. And we'll have, and it'll be right close to the water table because that area is flat as could be. Maintain a couple of the larger pines and then work in around them, and have two areas that I think will work well for their replication.
And when we looked at that today, there's a nice canopy. When I looked at the spot that you guys looked at, I'm afraid it's just going to be too dry. And so that's why we were thinking of breaking this up into two locations. I do, if this is what's permit, I do like the idea of breaking it up. And you've got some tall pines, and I think everything will revegetate well back down in that area.
Well, how many big trees have to come out to build the replication area? That's what that was a concern.
I wouldn't
That
say
was a concern I had.
Yeah,
On the other one,
and this one up here,
on the larger one, there's things,
Yeah, no,
there's
I realize
definitely
that.
invasive in that, and you could go, much bigger there, but where we have some disturbance down in that area, and it does have a nice canopy over it, I don't think it would be. I think you could minimize that one there. You'd have to go lay it out and come up with the exact location.
Right.
And look at that.
Right, I would lay out an area on here, call the thing out, call out for the cut, not do a grading plan per se for that. I'll do a grading plan for this, but I wouldn't do a grading plan per se. I'd call for the depth of cut and the material and stuff, and then we would just lay it out in between the pines. We may have to take one or two out, but I think we'd be able to get the square footage, because we're talking a foot and a half a cut in there.
All right.
And it could be an area to walk back out and just have them kind of lay it out.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yep.
The other thing is I tried to get it, and I thought the surveyors had gotten it, but we hadn't a tree count in the 50-foot zone and through here. So we did not get that. I have received a CR. It's not your Kinghorn. Kinghorn, is that the right name?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Amy, if you can make note to either email me or give me a reference, book page reference to it, so I can get that and I can compare those, and then I can get that right off to you. So those are, this basin got just a little bit larger in this direction over here, because we had to put in sidewalk for the, for Chris, for the town.
It was a change.
A sidewalk that they want to have, so that increased the impervious area, so I had to increase the basin size a little bit. So that's happening, and then the parking for this will then come for the trailhead down and then across and in. We're meeting with Green and the planning department tomorrow to go over a lot of the changes and the concerns and questions that they had, and we've gone through and addressed a lot of those. So the game plan was to get those, talk with you guys about the buffers or the replication, so we can put that in. And I know I gotta get you the CR, and I know I gotta get you an inventory. I'm in the process of those things right now.
Okay. What do you think are the main concerns with tomorrow's discussion with planning board?
I think that we went through their list, and I've had conversations with Chris Stoddard and with Tom from Green. We've gone through, and so that we both understood what they were asking for or what we had done. Some of them were little minor note things.
What was it that, and I apologize, I don't recall, what was it that we were asking Green to look at on behalf of conservation when they were doing their?
It was about how, or if you could describe the impact on especially groundwater inputs to that wetland, both from the septic system and the infiltration basin. If that's going to change the hydrology of the wetlands.
Have they
which
had a
Green,
chance to look at that?
No, Green basically said they don't have that kind of expertise. It's a...
Oh.
So with a septic system, your septic system is designed in accordance with Title V. Title V is doubling and tripling the federal guidelines for septic treatment. So we have a 4-foot offset to the groundwater. Because it's over 2,000 gallons a day, we do a mounting analysis whereby we take a look at the effluent from all these homes going into this system 24/7 for X amount of time, and then does it artificially impact the groundwater underneath? And depending upon what the perk rate of the soil is, sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, sometimes it's a little bit, sometimes it's not. So for the sake of argument, we'll say that it artificially impacts the groundwater a half a foot. Then we would raise the septic system up, the design system up for 4 feet above that to make certain that there's 4 feet of inundated soil underneath the system, so that the system gets to be treated, the soil treats the effluent the way
And
it's
your
intended
groundwater's
to.
at like 2 feet?
The groundwater's at like 2.5 feet over in there. It's a little lower, 2.5, 4 feet. It's 2 feet out here in the field. It's lower in here. I can't remember exactly what it is.
Okay.
So that takes care, from that standpoint, that. So you have a clean treated water that goes into the groundwater. The basin itself has got a series of treatment drains, as is per the requirements of stormwater management. So we're taking out over 80% TSS before we get in there. We've also, as Green will tell you, we've used the Cornell storm. We've switched over to the larger storms, and not the storms that we're required to use per Title V. We're using the much bigger storm. I think it's 8 1/4 inches of rain in a 100-year storm versus a 6 1/2 inches of rain in a 100-year storm. And all the settlements down through. So we're trying to cover everything from any environmental standpoint.
And it looks like it's mostly almost out of the 100 even too, the system, the main part of the
Yes,
system now.
the system itself there's a little bit of grading in the corner. All right, so if I can continue the next time to add the replication areas on, get the inventory of the trees within the 50-foot zone, and get you the CR as close to the kinghorn as I can.
Right, because the CR is going to be, once we have that, that'll be a separate conversation of who in fact will hold the CR and kind of to walk through that, but I think that's a discussion away, a meeting.
And remember, there are 2 CRs. There's a CR in the open space, and there's a CR on lot 15.
Yep.
And you guys all know I've gotten a little bit of delay on that front because of things on beyond all of our control.
All right,
And you're all set with the waiver?
Well,
No, these are things I'm doing so we can discuss the waiver.
So that's another discussion. Yep.
Any questions?
Yes. Surprise. Procedural question first, if I might. Did a little bit of analysis of my own based on what was posted. And by the way, are the updates going to be posted on the town website?
When the updates get submitted, they will be, I assume.
Okay, not before that? No?
If you can figure out how.
Okay. Well, that's good. So I did a little bit of analysis, and it does strike me that there are 2 sort of compelling reasons why there is a septic system and leaching field in my backyard.
It's actually not. It's a yard removed from you.
Oh, no, actually, well, since you flipped it, it's a little bit better, but, my neighbor's backyard also. But the density of the homes, the quantity of them means that private septic is really not feasible in that.
That's not true. I'm sorry, you go ahead, I'll be quiet.
And it seems that your lots 15 and 16 are incapable of having private septic because of their proximity to wetlands. They're outside of the 50-foot, but they are well within the 100-foot boundary, each of them.
They're out of the 50, they can be permitted.
That's right.
If they're out of the 50, they can be
Out of the
permitted.
50, they can be permitted.
Well, yeah, it depends on the municipality, but here, I guess that's...
In Littleton, they can be
Here we go.
permitted.
Okay?
Yeah, okay.
That's good.
Do you have a question?
I have concerns, but my procedural question is it possible to submit to the board anything that I might have done in terms of analysis and write-up? Because I know that in the first 2 meetings ago, you had asked for the lowest possible impact, environmental impact, and I don't recall seeing that presented. What I saw presented, I believe, was the case that this was the lowest environmental impact. And
Based on some of the other methods that were submitted,
Yeah.
like conventional, for sure. Yeah.
Understood.
Yeah.
There's some question about the initial development plan. And
That would be
and
planning
evolution.
board too, though.
I understand that, yeah, okay.
Okay.
But
I think Green International is the one that has been hired for the third-party review for specifically of analysis. And
Okay.
while I'm confident we can take that, I think it would then be put on to Green as well, if it's something that's submitted.
that would make sense. As part of...
But I don't know procedurally, I would defer to Amy for that.
As part of the analysis that I did, I looked at a lower density. The motivation for that is to actually increase the profitability of the project, because I believe people should be able to make money. By having such high density, the actual costs are quite high, because you have so many units and your profits are relatively low because you don't get a premium on a per house, per unit basis. By decreasing the density of the units, you actually have the potential for increasing the profitability per unit. And there's a crossover point, as you might guess, where having fewer units with a higher profit margin will in fact make for a more profitable and a less intrusive project. And that's the kind of analysis I tried to do on this.
How many lots did you reduce it to?
Well, I had 4 separate analyses. 3 kept the existing in the wetlands kind of 15 and 16, and 1 did not. It kept 1 of those. And I reduced them to 14, 13, and 12 units, new units. Right.
Additional units.
Additional units, not counting 195.
The existing
Mr. Levy's property. By getting rid of the shared driveways, by creating slightly larger lots within the same area, within the upland area, we can actually increase the price of each of the homes. And given that a lot of the costs are amortized over the whole project, as you probably well know, there is a greater profit potential per unit, and there is a crossover point. And my analysis showed that at the current density, it is the highest cost and lowest profit margin.
Where is the additional land that would be protected by using your?
Well, depending on which one. The parcel B actually remains without a septic system, if at all possible, because the larger lots support pretty well private septic. You don't have active components like grinders and pumps involved in that, so you have a lower probability of failure. You also have a much lower modulus of failure, which is critical when you're doing error analysis. The modulus of failure on this system is enormous, of course, because you're dealing with the effluent from 17 dwellings. You're actually discontinuing the private septic at 195 and tying that into the shared septic. So it makes me a little bit nervous to see that kind of modulus of failure in a system like that. So there's a number of factors that I tried to consider.
That's the kind of analysis that I would like to see in a development like this, personally.
Well,
To get at the most feasible, the most practicable, least environmentally damaging.
Right.
But
And it
mostly
has to
focused
be
on the need for the
profitable,
crossing.
Right. You have to make money on it.
Not the density per se.
Not the density per se, but he said that the profit, the whole reason to have those disassociated houses, 15 and 16, is because of the profitability, or the feasibility of even having a development. And I wasn't positive with the current analysis whether that was actually true. And I needed evidence. I wanted you to just back that up with an economic analysis.
That's the waiver.
That's the waiver.
That's the
right.
waiver.
Right. But that's what he was talking about, looking at alternatives.
No, they're
But that,
fairly
you
casual
expressed that
analysis,
at a
I
meeting or
confess.
two ago, when we
Yes.
were discussing the waiver.
Right.
Right, so that's still on the table.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
And you can certainly submit that to Amy and to the planning
Oh.
board. You're free to do that as a
Okay, again,
citizen.
it's hardly official or anything, but yeah, you guys
Yeah.
like to look at it and just get the,
Yeah,
get
right.
the wheels turning, that'd be great.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else? Okay. So we would continue this to the next meeting in 2
Yeah.
weeks. 21st works for you, okay?
When is Green doing there?
We'll talk.
When is Green doing?
We have to give a date now, so I'll say the
Oh,
21st.
21st
If
is
it gets
fine.
continued, we can.
21st is fine,
Yeah.
okay. Just
And we
timing-wise on
received,
that night.
yeah, okay. We received information from Green? Like, do we have everything back from Green?
I haven't seen anything from Green, but they're working mostly straight for the planning board.
Right.
They had their first comment. Or actually, maybe I did.
I was
see
gonna
it,
say,
yeah.
you must have received the first comment, I thought
Yeah.
I saw CC
Yeah.
in there, so. The first comment package is out, and we're responding to that.
Okay.
We're having a meeting tomorrow prior to
Yep.
submitting it to them. Make sure everybody's on the same page, and then, once that comes in, they'll respond back.
Okay. See you in 2 weeks.
Do you have any analysis to submit to Amy at all, or?
Oh, yeah,
It might be,
Again,
just make copies of it. and
It's
submit
fairly
it.
casual, it's not like something you're gonna get from Green or anything like that.
No, but it's
It's talking points, and it's,
I hate the field down below.
in fact, I have
In that
these
field.
copies, this is,
And we've got a copier in there if you need to
Oh,
keep a
they're
copy
not
for
ideal.
yourself.
They're not
oh,
ideal.
yeah, print the copy.
Exactly.
I have the means by which to do that.
Okay, thank you.
I also did a thing on the traffic issue.
So, is there more than one copy there?
I would be happy to give you a copy, in fact.
Boy, please.
There. And you don't have to wait for one to come around.
And these are for
This is
them?
for Amy? Yeah, for Amy.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Both of these, or both these the same?
Thank you.
I think they're printed differently, but I think they're the same. One is printed double-sided and one is printed single-sided.
Let them know that.
Amy's gonna stamp that received.
Okay, they're both color. They're both the same, I guess.
Right, they're just printed differently.
Do you guys have any sway over the highway?
No.
Because,
We gotta get going.
Good, notice of intent, 49 Mattawamkeag Trail, Mass DEP number 204, and I don't think we have it yet, unless Amy has it.
Somebody wanna speak to that?
You do have it? Okay, great, come on up. Okay. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Good evening, good evening.
Reintroduce yourself and tell us where
Sure.
we were and where we are.
Yes, my name is Dan Carr from Samsky Riparian. This is my colleague Bill Simmons, also from Samsky. I guess we'll go over the changes we made since the last hearing. I guess we'll go over the plan changes first. We've added a level spreader detail, which is where the runoff from the driveway is directed to. There's a mini catch basin at the low point in the driveway, and that directs the runoff to a level spreader, which infiltrates some of the runoff from the driveway and treats it before it overflows. Whereas currently the driveway is uncontrolled runoff, so that's an improvement.
Yep.
We show two areas of native plantings. There's a retaining wall between the two, so there's two nice little areas right next to the wooden staircase that is going to be replaced in kind. The applicant has provided a list of plants, and they've actually narrowed down the list of plants on this here, that they'd like to plant in that area. Oh, he has more copies.
Perfect. Give one down the end of that.
Those are the changes to the plan, and we've also submitted a more in-depth waiver letter that goes through all the constraints on the property. So the applicant has been before the Zoning Board of Appeals because the existing house and the proposed house are within the setbacks to the front and side lot lines.
Okay.
And so they got approval from the ZBA to rebuild the house using those same setbacks. So we can't push the house
Yep.
any further to the street or towards this lot line. And then there's the septic tanks and the pump chamber and the leaching trenches on this side, so we can't expand the house on this side, and of course, we don't want to expand it any closer to the pond, so we're using the same, very close to the same footprint of the existing dwelling with the proposed dwelling, so I think the architect did a good job of getting a house that works for the homeowner and also uses the same footprint of the existing house.
Yep.
And that's pretty much the changes that we made, and of course, there's a siltation barrier down gradient of the proposed work.
Okay.
I think those were all the concerns at the last hearing, so.
I mean, was there anything in the notes of interest for?
No, those were all the main issues.
Okay. We appreciate you taking a look at the plantings, because we've had good success with some of the other steeper banks on the lake to do that as well. I think you might remember we were a little bit over, closer to the 50-foot, and that's why they had produced a waiver for being able to have kind of long-term living there, and the request to try and keep one level.
Right.
So I think by adding certainly by adding and looking at some of the drainage issues and the plantings, I feel that's been a good interest for the site.
Great.
Anybody have any questions? We appreciate that you took the opportunity to follow what we feel is a much better plan for the land and for the lake as well.
There's also something that the applicant would like to do, and he understands that this might have to be a separate filing.
Okay.
If you guys are willing to close this tonight, then we want to do that. But he's
Okay,
also.
tell us what it is
Yeah.
first, or you
That's
could
what-
maybe just
Yeah,
keep
just
it
tack
going
on.
for another week or something. So
There's some pictures here there's been a lot of erosion on the edge of the shoreline.
Okay.
And there is, let me find the picture. This one, you can kind of see that there's even a yardstick in here. There's like lawn, basically, it's cutting away underneath the
Yeah.
lawn. And so the applicant wants to fill that in with like a pea stone or a 1 to 2 inch stone or gravel, and so that we can maintain the vegetation that's on top there without it falling into the
Okay.
lake. And then
how long have you lived at this residence?
7 years we've owned it.
Have you seen how much degrade has occurred? Because sometimes it's not the answer. So by doing that, there's probably a different answer because you're going to continue to have the wash.
Well, what we want to do is put in the, put in the stuff to support the land.
Have you seen it degrade a lot more recently, or has it just been consistent?
It's been more recently.
Okay.
In some areas, the undercutting is like 3 feet back from the shoreline. So
they're
there's
losing
3 feet of
losing their land. Huh?
Yeah. So you choose a bigger
And we had a
riprap.
tree fall into the lake
last year.
last year.
I can remember that.
Use a bigger riprap.
Thinking
Yeah.
bigger rock versus smaller rock.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're thinking bigger rock
Two-fisted.
versus smaller rock.
Well, I'll say
Try and-
riprap, so
But rip can be small though.
the.
About the same size as their
That's what you call it. Riprap
Like
is
river rock,
3
if
foot.
you do river rock, it almost like it's natural
like
line.
6 to 9 inch
So
rocks.
the rocks there are normally those are all underwater.
Mhm.
Currently, the lake's down about a foot, so we got 10 feet more beach than we normally would have. So normally those rocks are all.
So normally the water goes right to where it's undercut.
I imagine that's what's causing
Summer.
it.
Could be from the Waco
Right.
Bowl.
Yeah. So what we were planning to do was put smaller stone or gravel under, just where it's undercut, to support it, so that it's, put in there better than, large
Something that's gonna
rocks
have
would
any type of root
voids and
structure.
such.
Could you ever do that?
putting smaller
I mean,
onto
it
the
looks
line.
like there's a
pack
lot
it
of
in there,
roots.
And then at the front of
There's a
that,
tree
put
already
in large
fallen.
riprap just to keep that.
This one right here.
Yeah, but you don't want the round stone, you want that stuff that's jagged edge. You see it, people
That's,
use
that's
it
the
along
problem,
the edge of
because
the
if
roads
you,
down.
rounded stone's gonna move. in a
Right,
second.
so you
Yeah.
want something that's,
Yeah.
jagged,
Yeah.
round rolls.
Right.
Something- We were just trying to talk out here to see if there's any some type of plantings or something that could also go in to help redevelop that root structure to help keep those rocks in.
There are plantings all along the shore.
Not something that's really gonna kind of come down into that, hopefully.
Mangroves.
I was gonna say.
I was thinking willow.
Well, I mean, we've had.
Don't
different-
laugh.
No, I'm just.
You know, there's small plants there, but we had oak trees that got
Yeah.
totally undercut by the same, for the same 3 feet, and
Yeah.
then that fell in.
Yeah.
I think a more larger trap rock, you see a lot of people putting on the edge of the road or bankings now might be more appropriate.
Something craggy.
Yeah.
Yeah, right, so it.
Yeah.
We need that.
Yeah,
Stuff it in
something
there.
odd shapes.
Ugly.
Are you talking like a whole wall of riprap, like on a slant?
You're trying to get it under,
just
underneath. No, it's got
No, it
cover.
would just be, you know, the part that's undercut would be like
Stuffed back in.
stuffed with
Like stuffed
gravel and, you know, so that
What about how many linear feet is it along the bank?
Oh, no, it's.
along the bank, it's, the part that's eroded / undercut is like 50 feet. The part that's actually undercut is maybe half that. But then
The
there's
water's down. We're
some,
gonna do
some
it.
parts,
Is that gonna stop with those shoving them under there as opposed to?
well, the,
Slow down the waves at least.
Yeah, well, I think that's what's causing it is wave action, right?
Right.
When the water's up, the wave action's cutting it away, so that'll take that
right,
right
so
up.
the riprap would take the force of take the energy from the wave.
Mhm.
So the water's down now. Does the water, do they lower it in the winter, or does it?
It's.
Or does it have the chance of coming up
We
with
do
rain?
drawdowns.
That's in the process, I believe.
That's the one that's gonna start
Oh,
October
so that's the
15th.
same- oh,
Yeah,
that's right.
same.
But we haven't started yet. Right now, it's just, I mean, partly it's low because of the weather.
yeah.
Partly it's low because the Stony Brook flow restoration project has been doing
Starting.
releases all summer, so.
I'd rather amend this and let them do it now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, well, they have their.
There's other ways to do it, you can get those willow fascines and shove those in there.
Okay.
And then it
What's
might grow,
that?
so the willow fascines, it's
What's a
basically like a
fascine?
wattle,
Oh.
but it's made of willow or alder,
Cuttings,
yeah,
so you keep it there and it just
and it grows
grows.
in itself.
Oh.
But I don't
That's a
really know
good
what the
idea.
situation's like.
Could you do a combination? Like, does it help?
I don't know
I
what
mean,
the area
it's a
looks like.
long, it's a long distance, so I would like if there's a way to get some vegetation, because that's really much of a,
Speaking
It's
to
a
Kyle's point,
biostabilization thing.
If you don't stop the wave action, the vegetation.
Yeah, you
is
either
gonna-
do both,
trees are gonna
or I
keep
don't
going
think just
in.
putting vegetation in there.
yeah, so
If you-
like a
There are-
They-
there is
they
combination.
use those fascines on high energy areas.
Okay.
Yeah, but you gotta know what you're doing.
So do you want to incorporate that into this notice of intent, or do
I think
we?
we should because the
I would,
water's
because the
down.
timing is gonna be key with the
Timing's
drawdown.
critical.
Yep. And if it's a way to somewhat try and
I
stabilize
mean,
it.
it's bad, it's actually healthier than having all this stuff going down into the lake. I'd rather,
Right.
I'd rather have it stabilized.
So it
Well-
sounds as though it might be best if they could do a combination
Yeah.
of the jagged rock and what Amy's referring to as the fascine, to try and do that.
But do we need to have that in writing, or?
Could it be a condition, maybe?
Condition to deal with the erosion.
Except we'd have to have a plan, I would think.
It's a lot, if it's 50 feet.
We have a proposed statement of work.
But what about the fascine idea?
Fascine is plants?
It's basically cut material, willow or alder or something like that, and it comes in different
Rolls.
rolls that are just like, you tie them up together and you shove it in there, And, willows and willows will grow like crazy, they'll grow on themselves.
Oh, yeah, it'll grow. There's no question it'll grow.
Yeah, but, I mean, you need bioengineering. I mean, it takes a lot more thought than just shoving one of those things in there. And you can't run out and buy them.
Yeah, I mean, we
Because
have
that way it
neighbors
would
that have had-
stabilize it.
Well, we have neighbors that have had willow trees, two doors down, and over the last 5 years, they've all fallen in.
You cut them down so they stay small. Because when they get really big and the roots get undercut, then the whole thing, the weight of the willow.
They
big
grow
willow-
very quickly, but you can just keep cutting them
You
down.
just keep cutting them down.
Like a hedge,
So,
right?
yeah, like a
I mistakenly planted one. Yeah. In the wrong area.
So you keep cutting it down.
I'm about ready to chainsaw
I
the
mean,
whole
I haven't
thing.
got a problem committing it, but we need to have
They have,
them agree
Well,
to
we
it.
have a hedge there now, which we keep trimming, every
It
year.
sounds like you gotta have more.
you definitely need some rocks.
I think we need the rock, yeah.
Well,
rock.
right, so.
Maybe the fascine thing and then the rock? Is that what you're thinking? Maybe the rock would.
Well, that should be up to him to design it.
Yeah, we
Right.
can't design it. It's a high energy thing. We're not engineers.
I think you can say
It's
that it
just-
could be either or, like a combination
Yeah.
of with this and agree to
Yeah.
let them go forward. I do feel as though that the timing
Yeah,
is,
or hold them to the fascine if it's not gonna.
right, I think to look at that and say that we would be happy with either or a combination of, with the understanding that that would be done during the straw down period. That's not something we would try and do, obviously, in spring.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, the one add that I would have to this is if we're going just stone, you typically would, in my experience, you put some sort of filter fabric up against the exposed soil that's there. First, yeah, because even putting stone there, even if 1 to 2 inches, they'll still have some voids where those fines
Mhm.
from the material
Sort
could
of
wash
pack
out.
it in.
So yeah, you just put filter fabrics that would let the water flow through if there is any water that seeps through, but it would hold back any of the soil that's there.
Would it be fair if we permitted it, but come back with some sort of a definitive plan?
I don't know if you're gonna close it. You can submit it when we submit the order of conditions. If Amy feels comfortable with that.
Would that be all right, Amy?
Submit what?
So, what they've decided to do.
More than this?
Let us know what you decide.
As long as you feel.
Well, as long as, can we add just on condition that you will also consider the fascine?
Right.
And then make a decision about which one is the best?
So fabric.
Fabric filter first.
Next to the eroded soil.
Mhm.
And then consider the fascine and see if that'll work, then incorporate that into it.
I guess with trap rock or something there
Yeah,
too.
just not round rock, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Trap rock.
Right, crag rock.
Yeah, what you have described there is what I would recommend on top of some filter fabric.
Okay.
Cool.
Amy, can you tell them where they can access that fascine if they needed to?
I can give you a couple.
Okay.
Sorts, yeah.
Okay.
So I'd like to make a motion to
Close.
issue an order of conditions for 49 Manawanagi Trail.
What is your DEP number now?
901, I think it is.
Okay.
DP number 204901, on the condition that the fascine approach be considered as well, along with the plan for the proposed shoreline work, to be added to the notice of intent.
You need to put
as
trap
well.
rock in there.
Right, yeah, crag it.
Yeah, the crag
It's
riprap.
mentioned in his plan. Okay.
Yes.
Ground cloth and craggy rock.
Yep.
Yeah, good. Yep.
All right, second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
You're out of here.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Public
thank you.
hearing notice of intent, 13 Chestnut, R 16-1-7, Mass TV, DP file number 204-XX, refiling for a new house driveway and well-associated grading.
Yeah, I'm free. We're getting there. No, absolutely no power whatsoever.
Thank you.
It's either Monarch or it's the old HP.
Good evening.
Again.
For the record, Jeff Hannaford, representing the applicant at Lot 13, Chestnut Lane, for a new notice of intent filing. The plan is the same as previously. At the last meeting, it was discussed that there'd be a site visit take place on Thursday. I did meet out there with Amy, but I had another meeting and couldn't stay. I'm not sure if other members showed up.
Andrew did.
I did. Out in the
Good
rain.
man.
Yeah, exactly.
Even in the rain. We just confirmed that, the site was disturbed. Some work was done, and it's just been left at this point. Mainly because my client, over the past year, made a decision not to build on that lot, but to market it, put it up for sale. And what's prompted this is he does have a buyer. He has a purchase and sale agreement, and it's contingent upon permitting, and this is one of the permits that they need in order to consummate that deal.
What are your findings, Amy, or what did you?
It's pretty much what was permitted before. I mean, the work was semi-started. The driveway was roughed in, and I think we saw the leach field was kind of. So I don't think we had any concerns. It was just.
The only weird thing about this is that in the interim, the bylaw went into effect.
Right,
From when this was originally, so.
Yeah, you have in the 50 here.
Yep.
Right. And if it's a refiling, then it's covered under the new bylaw.
Yes. Yeah, so the waiver was as much because, first of all, this was an oversight that it expired, and that there were financial and health reasons why construction never got finished. So, in a sense, you could see it almost as a special case, the way that Cooper was.
Well,
if this had been
even
caught
if it's
and continued, it would have been continued under the old regulations.
right. Well, is there? It looks like though this has already been constructed. Is that right? Or how much has been constructed again?
Just about up to that turnaround.
Up to the turnaround.
It's mostly been paved up to there, but.
Yeah, it's been paved
roughed
just
in
short
otherwise,
of that
yeah.
turnaround.
Has
So
the
is there-
electric line been put in?
The transformer's in, but they won't run the line from the transformer to the house until the foundation's in.
Is the well in?
The well's in, yep.
Is there any way in this late date to at least reconsider the way this is designed to keep it out of the 50? Or is that the only option for the design of that this area here?
Is that a turnaround?
I guess so. Is it a turnaround or is it just a parking area?
Oh, it's the turnaround, it's, the garage is right here. So it's to enter the garage back up.
So is there an option or is this a defined?
Well, I think
must be?
that's,
Just put the garage door on the other side.
Just put it right here, you mean?
Then
You can
he's
drive
out of-
right in?
Then he's out of 50.
well, I guess then that would put it primarily on lot 12. Because this is the lot line here.
Mm.
I think the thought was keep the turnaround in the cars, the parking available on 13.
Oh, but you don't need the turnaround if the car is going straight, right?
You have to change the whole house, though.
Yeah, but there's nothing there. Her point is that.
But the house is designed, I think. Is the house already
Yes.
designed and no chance of.
Well,
Things-
Make them file under the new rules, and that'll be changes.
I'm kind of stuck in between because the buyer is not my client at this point.
Oh.
So we're working on the plans that we were given.
Right, but our client is wetlands, so.
Looks like a pretty minor modification to get them out of the 50, that's all.
Yeah, I mean, can you look into what it would take to get that out of there?
Well, the grading's still gonna be in the 50 to get the pavement out of the 50.
But the grading would be vegetated instead of impervious.
Right, so,
Yeah.
I just wanna make it clear that there's some,
Right,
yeah.
okay.
How many square feet approximately is that within the 50?
I'd say if that, 30, 40 square feet.
Looks like they'd still be able to back out and then go straight, even if. they
Right, I
didn't
mean,
have
if you
that.
want to make that a condition, that maybe we push
That means no waivers.
the back edge back a little bit,
Pretty minor.
trim that off, give them a little more room further back.
Yeah.
There is still, grading and drainage work to be done in this area, but we could minimize the
impervious
impervious
out.
portion, yeah.
So what are you looking for, another drawing?
Well, I feel as,
What?
yeah, I mean, if this were a new filing, you would make them really go through a hardship
redraw.
waiver, and I mean, we've seen these many times, so I think either move it out or go back to a whole new filing.
Well, this is a new filing.
No, meaning like to move it out, I don't think this
Oh.
meets the waiver.
Right. Well, I mean, they already are within the 50 here, so.
But that's built.
Right, but that's already
Yeah.
built, so.
Talking about new,
This is the
new-
only
new
part that-
construction.
Yeah. So he has to have a file for a waiver anyway for that part, I would think.
Well,
Yes,
that's
existing.
already built.
It's already built, so it's
That's
not
already
part
done.
of the waiver.
But still, it's part of the plan, right?
That was approved as part of Lot 13.
Oh, okay, so this was a whole separate filing? This
Yeah,
one?
where the property line is even closer to you.
This is, from there was a separate
Yeah.
filing? Oh, I see. Yeah, so we would
I don't
expect to.
think dragging this out too much, if we got something that's gonna happen and get it done. We've been playing with this a little too long.
No, we haven't.
Yeah, it's not, it's not us.
It's not
been-
significant.
It's not
I don't, I
I
feel,
think
I
just
mean, you
get it-
guys have been holding to your waivers
No,
and your
you can do
standards
it
for
right.
waivers, I don't, this is.
You can do
No,
it
this,
right.
this definitely should be changed or a waiver submitted, I mean, that's.
Well,
We did submit a request for a waiver.
um,
Or you basically said.
well, I mean, it's new, so I'm sure everybody's dealing with different situations and how to interpret. The way I read it, section 4.2, wetland setbacks for new activities and structures. This pertains to new construction activities. We feel that this section does not apply as the project involves work on lot where activities had already begun, including the installation of erosion control, tree clearing, rough grading, and the well. The proposed structure does comply with this section. The final grading, drainage, and driveway will encroach into the new no-disturb zone within previously disturbed areas. So the interpretation was that this has already been disturbed. Everything's been cleared. The erosion control used as a limit of clearing. So I just felt that it didn't meet the criteria of new construction where nothing had been done, there was no erosion control. We're talking about a virgin piece of land. 4.5 goes on to say wetland setbacks for existing structures and activities. I think activities is the key word there that allows this project to be permitted under 4.5. So, I would just say, if you want that change, I don't have an issue with that. But I do have an issue with the time. When we came in to the previous meeting, I expected comments like that at the time. If I had gotten that, I would have made the change by now. So if it's that, I think a simple condition can cover that to allow us to keep moving forward. I concur that with what's gone on here, I don't want to have to go back and say we have another delay and cause a problem with this sale. If I had known about that.
You don't have the authority to make a change if it's already conditioned under a sale.
What do you mean?
Like in terms of pulling some of this out. So,
Yes, I do.
Is this pulling is this, right? Or no? Or were you talking about this?
No.
You're talking about the pavement.
This. Yeah. I guess
so
what you're
does this
asking
have a
is
separate DEP number?
Has a new DEP number, yes.
Okay, so when we were having our conversations, it was basically based on 13, not 12, though. Like at previous meetings.
No, the previous meeting was
Was
the opening
finishing up
for
on-
13.
Right.
What was the opening hearing for this?
For
new notice of
13.
intent?
Yeah, but not for 12.
12's closed, done.
Okay.
12 is in for certificate of compliance, they just need to move
Oh,
some
okay.
grass clippings.
I didn't know that they were done.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, I would be amenable to having a condition be moving the impervious out of the 50 for the driveway. How do the other commissioners feel?
But, so, that goes back, you can do that even though you're not designing, well, I don't know, I'm confused on who owns
He's not
the
the
design of
applicant.
this. You're,
My client, right now, until the sale happens.
which is under agreement.
Right.
But if we did move the impervious area out, is there still gonna be site work within that 50 anyway? I mean,
Yes.
it's already
Yes,
been disturbed
they
as
have to put the
well.
drainage, but it wouldn't be impervious.
It's not pavement, right?
It's not going to be paved.
Right, it's the finished grading, stabilization, and drainage.
So in the
that
end,
would
it'll
occur.
be better to have it out.
Okay, and you said it was roughly, what, like 40 square feet, something like that? Within
Yeah,
the-
just by looking at it, I'd say,
This is the scale.
yeah, a triangle that's like 5 by 15 is about that size.
I think it makes sense to
Yeah,
cut it out then.
okay. Like to make a motion, and it has a file number, did you say? Did I miss
Is
it?
this 900, 204 900?
I'd like to make a motion to issue an order of conditions for lot 13 Chestnut Lane, Mass DP number 204900, with the condition that impervious part of the driveway within the 50 be adjusted so that no impervious is within the 50, although the drainage may still go forward within the 50, as already planned.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Thank you.
There's no chance I'm gonna be able to fold that back up, sorry.
So, Amy, are we
You're not
holding
taking a
that
souvenir?
until we get that noted, or what are we doing with that?
That is a condition, so you will need to submit a plan, and if a plan
Right.
is not submitted, you're not gonna get a building permit.
Right. I'll get that done very soon.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
151 Taylor, informal discussion.
Good evening. My name is Larry Beals, and this is Owen Paul. I'm with Beals Associates. He's with Northbridge, the owner of the property and the developer. I brought some boards. Well, all my material's out in the hall, so I'm going to have to go get it. I didn't want to drag it all in and bump my way through the chairs. But is it easier to put, I brought an easel. Should I just put them on? Okay. I'll be right back.
Yep.
conditions.
How close is this to the 225 Taylor Street? The neighbor?
Down the street.
Then it was something else. No, it's
Just
just-
leave where you guys set up.
Yep, you can just put it on the table though, that's fine. Many of us are familiar with the site.
Okay. So if everybody can see this, just to orient, this is one of those strange sites that doesn't have north to the top of the page. When you're on there, I have a hard time figuring out which is east and west on a cloudy day, but north is pointing up to this corner. So generally we have an east, west, south, and north. These are two buildings that were this was originally a gravel pit. It was owned by Leslie College, I believe, conveyed to Digital Equipment Corporation in the late 70s, early 80s, and Digital designed and permitted a two-story building here. I think this was about 100,000 square feet, and this was 200,000 square feet, plus or minus. They're comparatively small buildings because they had an office function in them and multi-stories, and but a lot of parking because there were a lot of employees in the building. So over the years, it has changed hands, and I know it was recently submitted to this commission for review, and a order of conditions was issued for a building located on this site. So everything's getting redeveloped, the building's getting demolished. After that approval, the property was sold and Northbridge acquired it. And we've taken some time to redesign it. Amy has been generous with her time, so we've had those meetings with the staff to talk about this project. And we've had two meetings, and at the last meeting, we had some questions about wetlands and site design and stormwater management, and the suggestion was, why don't you come in on an informal basis, discuss it with the commission, and at least get headed in the right direction.
Was this the one that was going to be open bays?
I thought, well, isn't that the one down the bottom, that was gonna be demolished and have that storage unit with the what do you call it, the tracking in it to be used as a
Automated
yeah,
distribution,
automated.
yeah, fulfillment center.
That's not us.
No, but I thought that's the one that was,
Yeah.
somebody came in.
I think it was just a rumor at the time.
Huh?
I think it was just a rumor at the time, like one of the suspected future uses.
Oh, okay. Well, this is our first time in front of you, so it was not we were not the ones in here.
When was this last flagged, under what condition?
It was pretty recently, like within the last year or so, I think.
Oh.
I'd have to check the timing. but-
Yeah.
That's right. Wasn't that?
And we looked at it, it was flagged a long time ago, we looked at it, they changed a couple flags.
So this is a redevelopment
Because
of
this is when you
the exact
went
footprint
on that
that's-
sidewalk, it was the one that's forested in the back, right?
Right.
Just down on the hill.
So that
down.
project's not happening?
The different
Well,
project
this
now,
is
on the
this is
same
what you
property.
approved. So
Yeah, that's still a live order
Right,
condition.
exactly.
right, right, and
And that's not gonna work for you, so you're gonna,
Correct.
okay.
Correct.
So we're gonna redesign. Okay, fortunately,
That's what
a
we're
lot of
here
people
for.
know the.
So is it expanding the footprint at all?
well, here,
or-
let me let me walk you through the drawings. This is what you approved.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Amy's right, it seems like the wetlands were given a close look in this area
Mhm.
originally. Well, you can tell by the numbering system where it goes, B24A, B24B. So it had, and we've field checked that. We've looked at all the wetland, and frankly, we agree with it. So not that we could change it if we didn't agree with it, but I think you got it right, or whoever mapped it got it right.
So are you concerned with that area because you might change that, or you may
Nope.
change
It's
the
just a
goal?
just a reference point.
Why don't
Yeah.
go through his spiel,
Yeah.
let's find out.
So
what
our
happens.
approach is we view the wetland boundary that is shown on this approval as being essentially carved in stone.
Okay.
So we're not coming back to challenge
Okay.
that. We thought briefly about making an issue out of this wetland. the way this wetland works is runoff comes from 495 into a pipe here. It outlets, it daylights there, flows a short distance, and back into a culvert, which then flows under the entrance driveway and down into another wetland system. And, you know, obviously, if there were no wetlands upstream, then this could be a resource area without a buffer zone, essentially. So we follow that fairly carefully. It goes through the 495 drainage, and then it goes up the hillside. And as you probably know, there's a fairly extensive wetland on the inside of 495. It's the property, I think, Katiris owns.
We're familiar with the land.
Yeah. So there's a wetland there, there's a wetland here, so it connects. This is a created wetland, but it does have hydric soils, and it has wetland plants growing in it. So we've respected that as well. And then Amy's challenge to us was try to convey what changed, which is not easy. So let me start presenting this plan is what we'd like to do. And then I can show you the differences. And the differences are good because they're positive in terms of impacts. So the building that was previously approved was more or less this configuration. So all the truck bays were in front of it. And it seems to me that there was a lot of debate during the permitting process about the septic system up here, the second point of access that came through there, and there were retaining walls here, I presume to protect. This illustrates the expansion of that wetland that occurred during the permitting process, and then some issues down here. It relied a lot on infiltrative drainage, and what we want to explore is the possibility of trying to do an open, oxygenated sunlight, visible low-impact infiltration here. So let me keep going, and then we can discuss some of those points. So this is a Mylar of the original. This is this one is the one that you approved. So so you can see our building. So their building was like this. Ours is like this. We have all our truck bays on one side. They have an elaborate retaining wall system here.
To keep out of the 50.
Yeah. There's a access point here. The fire chief had a concern and wanted to have this roadway in, I believe, I wasn't at the hearings, to provide access around the building. In subsequent meetings with him, we presented this plan, and he's very comfortable with this design because he, as he said, he can get his biggest truck in here.
Yeah, exactly.
Get it up on the roof if they have to. So
right.
We had shown him a plan with a retaining wall over here and a roadway all around it. He said he wouldn't use it because it's too close. Yeah. So that was a big help to us. And then what we've tried to do is illustrate, perhaps with color. And, we tried.
I know.
Believe me, this is not the first.
Changes on top of each other, so it's kind of hard to see.
Yeah, this wasn't the first iteration either. It's about 4 or 5. So the colors of significance is the original design is in blue.
Yeah.
This turns a little darker because it's combining with our brown building in the blue. And so to assess the impact, you look for our design underneath is in sort of a green shade, and the design that was originally proposed is in blue. So this is coming out, all the retaining walls are coming out, all of this stuff is coming out. There is an encroachment down here into your 100-foot buffer zone. This blue is the limit of work, and any place that you can see green is something that we're proposing, like in here, but we're doing this at grade, so there's no retaining wall there, which I think makes sense next to the wetlands. I'm not good at reading upside down, but we summarized it down here. So the proposed building footprint was 144, and we're 143,000. So it's a very minor decrease, but it's basically the same size building as was approved. Then we looked at the overall area of impact, and so we measured stuff within the limit of work. And what was originally approved was, in round numbers, 420,000, and surprisingly, we're down to 315. So it's a drop of 25% of the overall impact. And then I think what's probably more important to the commission is the buffer zone impacts. And there was a 51,000 square foot impact. We're at 17, so it's decreased by 65. And these are just takeoffs, but I think it quantifies at least what we're trying to talk about tonight. And then the final is total impervious areas, which we go up a little bit. And I'm not sure I agree with it, but this was viewed as being pervious because it was pervious pavers. So if this were impervious, we'd be well under it.
Yeah,
I see.
interesting, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's, I get it.
So things that are important to us is, if I can get back to our design, is this seemed to rely on some fairly elaborate infiltration systems over in this area. What we would like to do, and this is really conceptual, so I don't have the hard numbers, but what we think is feasible is to put all the stormwater into an open basin. And what we've tried to do in a very crude sense is show some variation in topo and plant materials and those microclimates, or micro habitats that you can create in that area. And we believe that we can do this with infiltration, 100% infiltration for a 100-year storm. We have an emergency overflow because you have to do that for the inevitable storm that exceeds 100-year storm event. But the drainage would be collected and sent into the basin here. This would be collected into the basin, and then the roof runoff would go into the basin as well. If we can't get all of that into the basin, then our preference would be to take the site drainage and put it into the basin, and then have the runoff from the roof go into the infiltration. And philosophically, what we're troubled by are all the infiltrations, because my experience has been if you can drive in and look and see if that's working. You know, if water's building up, it's not working. If there's a sheen in there, it's not working. And once it's buried, you don't know what's going on under the pavement.
I agree with that.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Okay.
Some things are
But
buried.
I remember that the issue there was that was all forested, so we got them to not cut down the forest to just put in drainage. You know, we talked to them about what the forest was doing there in terms of, you know, the stormwater runoff and all the other stuff that's going. I mean, their plan was different. Yeah, there was a lot that went into them finally getting into this.
Yeah.
They don't, they're this direction, but that's part of the discussion.
So we creep over that line that much. So there's, and I appreciate the fact that that is a forested area, but their limit of work in which they would take down the trees.
You should have seen the other plan, man. I'm talking about. You know, so we're bringing you up to speed.
Yeah, 0 to 60 very quickly.
They were though going into the forested area here as well. So I think that that was a concern.
But also, yeah, they would, that other plan that they had, that was all the way out and pushed it all back.
Yeah. Well, we've read the minutes of the meetings. We've read a lot about, you know, it's like cheating on an exam. We almost knew what the answers were before we got here. But
Larry, is that basin even in the 100-foot buffer zone?
No. So we, the significance to this drawing is this is the.
Out of our jurisdiction.
Well.
No, because it may
might impact.
outlet out.
Discharge.
There's gonna be some discharge. Can we talk a little bit, and I recognize that's conceptual, and I appreciate you all coming in to do that. Let's talk about life expectancy of a unit such as that, designed for, and how big is that, for lack of another word, structure? How large would that be? And have you built those before?
Yeah, a ton of them.
Okay. And where are they in the longevity of that?
They're still working. We did a bunch of them for an auto auction facility in Billerica, where you have big parking lots, potential for oil.
Do they require, in the O&M, do they require a lot of maintenance, or?
Not a lot.
Okay.
If it's designed properly, and we have some discharge points here and here, and for the small storm events, you're not going to have a lot of water. You can contain it within, sort of a tortuous path through that basin, so that you're straining it through a number of linear feet of vegetation.
Seems like the clean the water coming off the roof would be better to be infiltrated than put the other stuff into that.
Out where you can see it, yeah, for sure. Put the water underneath.
All right, you're talking about an actual constructed wetland, pocket wetland, or pocket wetland light? Are you going to be the whole DEP standard for the whole thing, which
Well,
gets tortuous, or?
I wouldn't want to be hamstrung by that. Because sometimes you get so caught up trying to meet the spec that you lose common sense.
Yeah.
So I would say constructed wetland-like, primarily to infiltrate, to treat the stormwater runoff, and then to have a mechanism for maintaining it.
Okay. So I tend to be the realist, so when this ultimately, in someone's lifetime, when it fails, where does the next system go? And so we always kind of have to look from that down the point, how do we have that? Because it obviously doesn't have a backup plan to that. So that's why I asked of the longevity, how, in your experience, how long they would last.
What size trucks are coming in there? Trailers?
Tractor trailers, yeah.
How many at a time?
It's hard to predict. So we've got loading here, here, and here. So there's 12, 14 trucks.
Yeah, but they're bringing in salt and what have you off the highway too. Calcium. All that kind of stuff's gonna come in on a trailer, truck.
That's a good point.
Well, it's a great point, and I guess the choice is, so do you catch it in a catch basin and then put it under the parking lot, out of sight, out of mind, or
maybe catch it in a catch basin and put it into that afterwards.
Absolutely. So this is a system designed with deep sump catch basins and hoods. So the first crack at the suspended solids is the deep sump, and the hoods do a reasonably good job of taking the oils and the floatables out. So that would be done, and then once it's in there, then at least you can observe it, and anybody can drive by and say, geez, this looks pretty good, or it doesn't look so good, and you can consider it.
Better off not to get it in there.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
It's like what we went through with the train, by adding that.
Or 495 when they had the crash.
Okay.
So what's gonna be in the building itself? Or
It's a warehouse distribution.
Right, exactly, and we don't have tenants.
Is that
signed
gonna
up
be one of
yet.
those automated ones?
No, we're not anticipating that at this time.
Otherwise, we wouldn't need parking for the people that work there. We did a warehouse for NEC years ago that was completely automated, and I never really thought about this till I went into it, but it's dark. You don't need lights. So there's all that stuff going on in the dark. It's frightening.
All right.
So I should also say that we have a pretty good distance above the water table there. So the building elevation isn't shown on this drawing, but I may have marked it on one of them. But the bottom of the basin is at 232, and, okay. So the building's at 246, and
What part of the slab of the building?
the slab, first floor elevation's at 246. And then over in this area, there were a couple of test pits that show water is at 223 and 223 and a half. And the bottom of the basin is at 232 at its lowest point. So we have 4.5 feet of separation, which is more than I think we're really required to have, but it does make sense to have a good separation.
Yeah.
And this is graded so that you can get around the top of the berm if there is a need for maintenance. And I guess our question is it crazy for us to consider this, or would the commission listen to perhaps a compelling argument that we think that this is a good design without, or would you at least listen to us and not reject it right away?
I don't know, I see lots of positive changes, actually, personally.
Yeah, and I thought it was a good idea for them to come in, because that was a pretty fundamental land use change after a lot of discussion to get the stormwater put under the parking lot and out of the woods, so it's just going back, so.
Well, I like to see what's going on as opposed to having it underground, personally.
But if you put the roof water in, that wouldn't
Right,
be
I
a
think
problem. That
something
would
like,
cut down on
something
the
like
amount of
roof,
water.
I'm okay putting underneath.
I think I'm okay with that.
Yeah. I'm concerned with putting all our eggs in one basket outside.
Especially where you got trucks,
Yeah.
diesel fuel.
Yeah.
leaking.
The inherent risk of something happening there.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm certainly compelled by the numbers that are shown in terms of reductions.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Does that have a septic? I know there was concerns with the septic from the old design. What's the plan?
We haven't designed it yet.
Where's
but
it going?
Where's it gonna go?
It'll probably go under, I believe we've got a lower population. I'm not so we would propose to put the septic system under one of these parking areas, depending upon where the utilities are. We're not gonna, we'd like to not have to go up on that hillside, because I looked at that design, and I think the septic tank was,
Well, I'd like to not see the septic system underneath where you're driving the trucks in and out.
Right, that's why you're saying to put it
Yeah.
in front.
yeah. So those septic tanks were actually out in this area that we're talking about. So there were a couple of septic tanks here with a sewer line that goes up in this direction, I think, and eventually winds up over there. So it didn't seem particularly efficient. And I don't know what the use was inside the building, so it's not fair for me to critique it. But if the trucks are coming in here, that means the people are over here.
Mhm.
So it makes sense to put the septic system.
Yep.
And these are on the scale of a couple of homes as opposed to
Right.
the type of population if this were an office building.
Smaller septic.
Oh, yeah.
Did you buy both buildings?
No, we didn't. We have been inquiring about that other building, because it would be an easier project to permit both at the same time,
Right.
work with you guys on that front. But it's currently owned by a group called DXC, which is a subsidiary of HP. And trying to get them to see reason is fairly tough. So we did have a bid in with them, but they had gone with another buyer. I think that's fallen through, so we're not sure where it stands at this point.
Amy, is that the one that was gonna be the automated one? Was gonna be torn down? I'm a little bit
We haven't looked at
confused.
the one in the back in ages.
Huh?
We haven't looked at the one in back.
There's what, 3
Yeah,
buildings?
because that's what I
down
thought
there?
we were gonna talk about. I thought it was
Two
one and
two
one.
buildings. It's 151 and 153, Taylor.
And then the Monarch Drive stuff's
Yeah,
way,
the Monarch
way,
Drive's
way
down.
in.
Right, that's what I thought.
Down over here.
Yeah.
Our little turtles crossing.
Oh, you got the blended turtle
He
business.
doesn't, the one behind does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's
I've worked on a lot of turtle projects.
Well, there's a lot of turtles behind you.
Yeah. What kind?
Which one? The one Monarch or?
Flames,
Yep.
actively.
Where's What are the critical areas over there for turtles?
Is it over
It's
here?
over
In
here.
this field.
Monarch?
Yeah, yes, monarch.
They're blanding turtles?
Yeah.
Wow.
So getting back to your original question, commissioners, what are your thoughts? So just in terms of feedback, is this
I would
something we would like to be,
Yeah.
I think it's
Moving
worthy of being
forward.
heard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a lot more work to do.
Yep,
but,
for sure, and as always, we appreciate discussions like this, especially if you have queries on the septic and location and things like that. So if we have any initial input that we can give to you, we're always happy to have you be part of a discussion late at night.
If you want to come back in with a tentative, more of a tentative design.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Love to do that.
And are you going to have a conversation with the Board of Health about the septic too? Just because, I mean, I'm not sure about
How
septics
small, it
under-
would be interesting to see how small they're able to go
Yeah.
with the septic, based on the size of the volume, so
Yeah.
if there's a change of use.
Do you have any idea how many people will be
I
in
appreciate
the
that you've
building?
spoken to the fire chief as well.
Not
Yeah.
this
We try
time.
and work in
You know, it's
unison.
entirely dependent on the tenant that ultimately goes in there. But, you know, we can guarantee it's not going to be as big a system as the one that's servicing an office.
Right. Which would be
So
better.
for the business you're trying to get in, it's a perfect location, isn't it, with off the
Yeah,
ramps
um,
and, close
you
to
know,
495
and all that kind of
Right.
thing?
You know, that type of product that's kind of smaller bay, and right now we have got a design that's you know, potentially 4 tenants. So there'll be a few trucks, but there'll be some manufacturing space and stuff like that. You know, so a handful of office employees, but you know, that type of space has been going away on 495, and these offices have been less and less desirable as time has passed.
Okay. Alrighty, any other questions?
Nope.
Okay, good luck.
Thank you very
Thanks.
much.
Yep.
Appreciate your time.
Yep.
As we go through the process, do we get bumped up on the agenda, or?
After you put a filing in, yes.
Okay.
When you pay some money, then you get moved up.
Pay to play, is that
It doesn't get any easier, though.
So just a couple other quick things. MBTA is ready for a site walk. They staked everything, so I don't know if you want to try to set something up to do that sometime before it gets dark.
It's getting dark earlier.
Dark earlier. So I know Friday works for you guys, or anybody? Who wants to see it?
I could do, yeah, that works.
How early on Friday could you do it?
Who's going to the meeting tomorrow night?
Kyle and Anna.
I might do 4.
And what?
Julie won't be there, I don't think.
Yeah, pretty much not.
That's for Glavies.
4 o'clock? Is that too early?
4
for you?
o'clock? Oh no.
Yeah.
What doesn't get out until 4:30?
What about 4:30?
I don't get out until 4:30.
On
Then he's
Friday.
got to
or
fight
long
his way
weekend.
down
We work
495.
Oh, it's a long weekend for
full
you, baby.
hours every day.
Yeah, I work, so. yeah.
5 o'clock?
I could do like 5:10, going like full speed back from Lowell.
And
Don't get
495
pulled
isn't
over,
a
that's
dead
taking
stone.
it for it.
No, first time.
He's got some pull anyway.
No.
That's good to know. In case they get in trouble.
Anyway, guys.
It depends on what rounds. 5:15 would be fine. 5:15?
Oh, I could do 5:15. That would be good. On Friday?
He'll still be in his dress clothes.
You kidding me? You're counting on 495?
So Anna and Andrew?
Now, what's the address again? How do we?
It's the T, it's the train station.
Oh, that, yes.
That
Send
one.
out a reminder for that, Amy, when you.
Oh, I will.
Thank you. Can we close this hearing? please? Nope.
Oh, well, Kyle Mann has done some brush cutting and I cannot keep those houses straight back there. Worcester? Westchester?
Oh.
Whatever.
Off of
The lot that he came in for?
Westchester.
Westchester, yes.
I'm gonna meet him out there tomorrow and see what's going on, but may ask him to do some replanting or something. It was all invasive species, so we'll see. Now you can close.
At 10:06.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
night.
Good night.